Chapter 521. In terms of decisiveness, few people could compare with Wang Lu. At the moment when Lu Xian was about to commit suicide, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi broke out of his body. However, contrary to the expectation of the surrounding people, the sword qi was not aimed at the sword in Lu Xian's hand, but at the river under his feet. With a loud bang, the river water rose to the sky. The sword qi raged and crushed many fish and shrimps in the river. At the bottom of the river, the angry roar of the resuscitation of the giant beast rolled over. At the head of the team, Ouyang Shang, who had a tacit understanding with Wang Lu, loudly roared, "Go!" This roar contained the true qi of the king pill, and the deterrent effect was no less than that of the Zen lion's roar. The sound wave spread in all directions, suppressing the roar of the giant beast at the bottom of the river and shaking the waves of the river. The cultivators of Spirit Sword sect on the river were also shaken, and their magical power involuntarily surged up. Their bodies seemed to be attracted by an external force as they followed Ouyang Shang forward. The next moment, the giant beast at the bottom of the river felt the provocation and completely broke out from its slumber. A dark blue icicle rose from the bottom of the river, and the huge vertebra enveloped everyone in its frozen range. At this critical moment, Wang Lu's non-phase sword and Ouyang Shang's void earth shield shot out at the same time, colliding with the icicle. After a dull bang, the two of them were pushed into the sky by the recoil force, but the freezing of the icicle was also delayed for a moment. The rest of the people did not dare to hesitate and tried their best to escape. Under the deterrence of the giant beast at the bottom of the river, at this moment, any entanglement and hesitation were swept away, and only the will to survive occupied everything. The next moment, behind the crowd, an icicle condensed and formed. The fish in the river and the birds in the sky were all frozen in the icicle, and their vitality was extinguished. Were it not for the slight deflection of the body of this icicle, the people of Lingjian's school would not have been spared. The crisis was not over yet. The attack of the giant beast was blocked, but as the master of the river, the giant beast had countless underlings. At this time, they jumped out one after another and began to use their demon techniques to interfere with the action of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. Some stirred up the river water to form whirlpools, some laid down thick fog that covered the sky, some used the demonic artifacts in their hands to attack from afar, and some simply jumped out of the water to intercept. Although these prawn soldiers and crab generals were only miscellaneous soldiers in the river, there was no lack of people with shocking strength. Among them, a few green crabs even had full inner cores that were overflowing with brilliance. They already possessed the strength of golden core realm cultivators. At this time, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu were still on guard against the giant beast itself, and had no time to spare to help. Although the others in the team were all elites of the same generation, it just so happened that there was no assaulter who could lead the team out of their predicament. There were about 100 people in the golden generation, and those who could be called assaulters were also very rare. "Everyone, follow me!" At this crucial moment, Lu Xian let out a roar. His whole body was bathed in golden light, and an astonishing magical power fluctuation surged. You're burning your innate Yuan Qi?" Beside him, Xie Mingxian was surprised. "It hasn't been long since you reached the Shudan realm. Rashly using your innate vitality it's my atonement." Lu Xian roared furiously. The flying sword in his hand turned into a golden bridge that led straight ahead. Wherever the bridge went, the group of devils would scatter, and the few green crabs would also sway. They were forced to lose their footing. "Everyone keep up." Xie Mingxian no longer hesitated. He also ignited his innate vitality to help Lu Xian, making the golden bridge more solid. Immediately afterward, the rest of the people also followed, using their own strength to reinforce the bridge, and then moved forward along the golden bridge. No one could stop them. The group of people flew to the other side of the river at their fastest speed. During this period, no one had the leisure to be distracted by other things. Reinforcing the golden bridge so that the group of demons could not get close to it. The golden bridge that Lu Xian released by burning his innate vitality had a very strong evil-repelling effect. After the joint effort of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect, it became even more indestructible. Several green crab generals madly slapped the golden bridge with their giant claws. Each blow had the power to crack open a mountain, but they could not break the golden bridge. And the only monster that had the ability to break the golden bridge, for some reason, never made a move again. The river was wide, but eventually, it had an end. After no one knew how long, the end of the golden bridge finally reached the riverbank. When they reached the shore, It was no longer the sphere of influence of the monsters of the river. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals unwillingly retreated. Then they shifted their attention to the two people who were still hovering above the river. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang never followed the Golden Bridge. It was not because they were confident, but because of the monster in the depths of the river. Only they could barely resist it, so they had to stay behind to cover the rear. Of course, in the face of such a monster, the two of them did not have the confidence to win. However, they had enough means to make the opponent afraid and not dare to rashly provoke an all-out war. Wang Lu put away his non-phase sword art and operated his primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi to the limit. His two hands were filled with sword qi, which continued to crush the space, as if tearing the yin and yang, stirring the primal chaos. Ouyang Shang also put the spiritual treasure-level flying sword in front of his chest. The sword light was like a wave, and wherever it went, water vapor would rise, as if a great drought had arrived. Ouyang Shang was naturally intimate with the earth, which was even better than his earth spirit root body. This should have been a characteristic that was good at defense. However, after he changed the way he used this ability, he turned into the natural enemy of the aquatic creatures, Drought Demon. Both of them gave up their defense and went all out to attack. If the big river monster really wanted to fight to the death, they might not be its opponent, but they could leave the opponent with a serious injury that could never be healed. This was not because of how solid their cultivation base was, but because of the supreme effect of the immortal level method, the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi. The immortal level method was the crystallization of the human cultivator's tireless pursuit of immortality for tens of thousands of years. It was also the fundamental reason why human cultivators ruled the world. Against such an opponent, not many monsters were willing to fight to the death. It was not easy for monsters to achieve immortality. For a strong monster like the big river monster, it would mostly need to cultivate for thousands of years and pass through countless tribulations. However, human beings often had the same cultivation base within 100 years. Therefore, unless it was necessary, monsters were rarely willing to fight to the death with human beings. In the end, the giant beast at the bottom of the river did not choose to make a move and let the two people leave. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang hovered in the air for a while. Seeing that the situation was settled, they followed the team to cross the river and rested for a while on the shore. When they landed, the two of them swayed at the same time and spat out black blood. That was the price of resisting the icicle head-on. However, after spitting out the blood, their complexions were a lot ruddy. Obviously, they had completely suppressed their injuries. However, the focus of the team was not the two of them. Everyone was in a circle, and in the middle was Lu Xian, who was sitting cross-legged. Seeing the arrival of Ouyang Shang, everyone consciously separated for him. Ouyang Shang did not say much. In a few steps, he came to the back of Lu Xian, and then put his hand on the top of Lu Xian's head. Using the wisdom imbuement technique, he helped him smooth out the violent power of the void core in his jade mansion. He also used the pure immortal spirit energy in the king pill to make up for his innate vitality deficit. After a moment, Lu Xian's complexion slightly improved. After taking a deep breath, he stood up and then cupped his hands toward his senior brother. Ouyang Shang nodded and then looked at the others. Everyone, do you understand? Xie Mingxian and the others nodded one after another, and then gratefully looked at Wang Lu. In particular, Lu Xian bowed deeply, almost kneeling down to pay his respect. Just now, above the river, Lu Xian was unfortunately controlled by the demon race and attacked Wang Wu. After that, although he recovered his sanity, he faced a situation where his trust had collapsed. Was a person who had been controlled by the demon race still trustworthy? Or, how to prove that he was the real person and not the demon race in disguise? This was actually an unsolvable problem. Because of Li Shi's flawless disguise, any act to prove his innocence seemed powerless. Therefore, Wang Lu took the initiative to make a move, providing an opportunity. In short, it was a fight with his life. Trust was not purely rational. If you wanted to prove it rationally, you would only fall into a trap, and the simplest way was to use passion and emotion. When people saw with their own eyes that Xie Mingxian did not hesitate to risk the danger of perishing and resolutely burning his innate vitality to cast the Golden Bridge, even the greatest doubts would vanish like smoke in thin air. The Golden Generation originally had very deep emotional fetters, and to rebuild trust, they only needed an opportunity. Wang Lu provided an opportunity at the fastest speed, and Lu Xian did not disappoint and seized this opportunity. Now people had forgotten the past of Lu Xian being controlled by the Demon King and once again accepted him as a brother. Of course, if one really wanted to take it seriously, there were indeed many things that seemed far-fetched. For example, the purpose of Wang Lu's attack was too deliberate, and Lu Xian's behavior just now was probably just a demon's disguise. But what was the difference between that and not? Since the demon race could control Lu Xian without anyone knowing, they could also control anyone else. Blind suspicion was meaningless. As long as it was emotionally acceptable, that was enough. This move of the demon race was to destroy the trust of the Golden Generation, and the task of the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect was to protect this trust. And in this round of confrontation, it was obvious that Lingjian's school won. At the same time, if the demon race did not have a new trick, the next round of confrontation would still be won by the disciples of Spirit Sword Sect. After reorganizing the team, Ouyang Shang said, "The Blessed Fountain base is already very close. Everyone will have to work hard. Don't rest, go all out." One day later, everyone arrived at Blessed Fountain. In the Blessed Fountain base, more than half of the Golden Generation had gathered. Since Wang Donghua and Shen Yiwen both died in Ghost Weeping Forest, Ouyang Shang sent a letter to Blessed Fountain from the temporary base outside Ghost Weeping Forest, asking them to find a way to contact everyone else and gather at Blessed Fountain as soon as possible. The opponent was elusive, unpredictable, and obviously aimed at the disciples of Spirit Sword Sect. At this time, no matter how radical the training policy was, it was impossible to let the disciples of Spirit Sword Sect act independently in the Savage Land. After arriving at Blessed Fountain Base, Ouyang Shang immediately asked, "Is there a reply from the sect?" The two junior brothers who returned to the mountain to ask for help a few days ago should have the result, regardless of whether it was successful or not. Yang Fei, who came to greet them, had already expected that his big brother would ask this question, so his face raised a smile. "Master has already replied. The reinforcements will arrive in 3 days." His smile contained the confidence that victory was within his grasp. Chapter 522. A few days ago, when Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang sent their two junior brothers back to the mountain to ask for help, they actually didn't have much hope. If everything went well, of course that would be the best. The elders of Spirit Sword Sect and the other sects of the Wanxian League would come to support them. At that time, no matter how powerful the demon race was, they would be annihilated. Previously, Wang Lu couldn't judge the opponent's card, so he didn't dare to rashly expand the scale of the war. But now that the black tide had been suppressed, he had no scruples. However, they really couldn't expect too much from the request for help, because it was not difficult for the opponent to judge the situation. As long as the demon race was not stupid, they must be able to see the importance of blocking the news. As long as this group of disciples of Spirit Sword Sect was completely killed, it would be difficult for Spirit Sword Sect to find out the abnormality for a while based on the isolation of the news in the Savage Land. And when they found out the problem, the demon race would have already completed the arrangement, and they would no longer be afraid of anyone. As long as Wang Lu was killed, the terrifying black tide in the desert would continue to accumulate until it erupted. When the black tide swept through, the Lingjian school would embark on the road of the real history. Therefore, from the beginning, sending people back to the mountain to ask for help was somewhat of a gamble. It was just that, under the situation at that time, this move couldn't be put aside. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Ouyang Shang chose two junior brothers who were proficient in escape technique and life-saving to send the letter back to the mountain. Fortunately, although the development of the situation was not particularly smooth, it was still controllable. Now, even if the action of the two junior brothers was not smooth, and the letter for help could not be sent back to the mountain, more than half of the people in the Blessed Fountain base had already gathered. As long as these people could be led back to the mountain, it could be considered as a victory. Now that he heard that the two junior brothers had successfully sent the letter for help, Ouyang Shang finally let out a deep sigh of relief. Along the way, as the big brother, he shouldered the heavy pressure that made him deeply tired. The unpredictable enemy, the terrifying black tide of the demon race, and the lives of more than 100 brothers and sisters all had to be shouldered. And at this time, he was just a young man who had just achieved the King Pill. Fortunately, this difficult test eventually came to the end. After 3 days, the reinforcements will arrive, so everyone must be careful in these 3 days, don't fall before dawn. After giving a brief explanation to Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and the other people in charge of Blessed Fountain Base, Ouyang Shang returned to his room to rest. He was really tired all the way here. But when he opened the door, he saw that there was already someone in the room. Seeing that person, Ouyang Shang could not help but smile bitterly. Junior brother Wang Lu is really energetic, aren't you tired? Wang Lu said, I'm as tired as a dog, so I came here to relax. Junior brother, if you have something to say, just say it. There's no need to talk about leisure. Wang Lu said, hey, I was thinking that since it's rare for me to have a break, I might as well show some affection to you. But since you're so against the pure friendship between the same sex, I can only... Ouyang Shang could not bear to listen any longer and quickly interrupted. What do you think about the reinforcements that will arrive in 3 days? Wang Lu sighed and said, of course there is. I came to find you not only for leisure but also to discuss this matter. According to the original timeline, the Lingjian school was completely annihilated. And because I know this, I've always opposed the idea of bringing the elders here. Unfortunately, with the change of the situation, in the end, we still walked on the old road. Although we have done enough safety measures, after all, we still have to bear great risks. Ouyang Shang said, in the face of such a powerful enemy, there's no reason not to take risks. Now that the black tide has been sealed by you, and after several confrontations with the enemy, although the other party's means are mysterious, it's obviously impossible for them to completely annihilate the elders of Spirit Sword Sect. Reasonably, we don't need to worry about this for no reason. From the moment you came here, the historical line has already undergone irreversible changes. Wang Lu nodded. Let's put this issue aside for the time being. Let's discuss the next issue. These 3 days will be very difficult for everyone. The more than 50 people in Blessed Fountain Bay seem to be powerful, but under the pervasive infiltration of the opponent, the more people there are, the more flaws there will be. The move to protect Lu Xian can't be repeated. If there's a slight mistake, the more than 50 people will be in chaos. Even if you and I take action, I'm afraid it will be difficult to suppress it. Ouyang Shang nodded. That's right. So just now, I have asked Yang Fei to bring his junior brother who is good at array arrangement to reinforce the Blessed Fountain base, and with the demon artifact enchantment left by the Flood Dragon. Wang Lu interrupted. No matter how impregnable Blessed Fountain base is after all, it's only from the hands of our group of young people who have reached the highest level of King Pill. When we were in Ghost Weeping Forest, we couldn't prevent the other party's infiltration, so it's also impossible to be sure when we return to Blessed Fountain. Ouyang Shang sighed. I know, that's why I also asked Kai Xia to make other arrangements. Strict internal management, strict monitoring of every disciple. The idea is right, but I always feel that the strength of the means is not enough. Ouyang Shang said. It's not safe to rely on junior sister Kai Xia and the others alone, so after a short rest, I plan to personally come out to inspect the base. Blessed Fountain Base was expanded on the basis of the Dragon Palace. The original master of this place has many subordinates, and the scale of the Dragon Palace is huge. Can you guarantee that there will not be any blind spots? It's not enough even if you add me. In my opinion, it's better for you to come out and order everyone to gather in the hall of the Dragon Palace, and then you and I will arrange an array in the hall to limit everyone to a square grid of 1 square foot. Within 3 days of the arrival of the Elder, everyone must stay in the grid and must not use external spells. If there is any violation, they will be regarded as being possessed by the demon race, and everyone will attack together. Ouyang Shang said with a wry smile. This method of yours is completely unconventional. If it's really implemented in sequence, it can indeed eliminate the chaos caused by the demon race's possession to the greatest extent. But this is tantamount to questioning that all the junior brothers and sisters here can't be trusted, planting the seeds of doubt first. Wang Lu said, originally, they can't be trusted. In theory, even you and I are not trustworthy. It's just that no one is qualified to question you and me now. And big brother, with our tacit understanding, don't tell me that you haven't thought of this before. Being questioned by Wang Lu like this, Ouyang Shang could only respond in silence. Don't be shy. Before I came, you didn't even lock your own door. It's clear that you were waiting for me to come. Ouyang Shang still didn't speak, just silently took half a step back, a little further away from Wang Lu. Hey, it's very easy to cause misunderstandings if you try to cover up like this. In any case, just say it or not. Ouyang Shang pondered for a moment. 2 problems. One is that this matter really shouldn't be handled by me. I know, of course this kind of proposal that offends people should be said by me. Later, I will call everyone for a meeting. I will be responsible for the proposal. You don't have to say anything. Naturally there will be people who will come forward to support it. You can trust your junior brothers and sisters on this point. Ouyang Shang smiled bitterly again. This kind of politician's trick of using other people's trust is really disgusting. Wang Lu backhanded a plate of vinegar peanuts. If it's disgusting, you can eat something sour, but things have to continue. Let's eat and talk. In times of crisis of trust, it is necessary to set up an unquestionable idol, and this idol is none other than you. But the second problem is more troublesome. Using the array to restrict everyone's movement can certainly protect the internal security. But once the enemy invades from the front, people who are restricted in the grid will inevitably be passive. So I suggest that you leave me to guard the outside. You really dare to mention it. If it were someone else, I would have some doubts just based on this proposal alone. Wang Lu said. So the position of guarding the door is none other than me. Among all of us, I have the highest resistance to external invasion. If the demons could control me, they would have already made me commit suicide to erase the mark of the black tide. Since I can jump around until now, it proves that their infiltration is ineffective against me, so it's safer for me to guard the door. Well, I know. Well, as you say, I will call a plenary meeting later. You prepare for the proposal. Haha, it's to prepare for the rolling eyes. At the plenary meeting, Wang Lu was indeed greatly questioned. His first proposal was quickly passed, but there was no progress on the second issue. In a special period, everyone should be confined in the main hall and isolated by the grid array. Although this method is a bit rough, it can be regarded as an effective means to protect everyone. Although I am indeed a bit unhappy about this, I have no objection. My question is, why is it that even Big Brother is within this restriction, but you can run outside the hall without being restricted? Kai Xia's righteous question was approved by many disciples of Spirit Sword sect. I know you're strong, even stronger than eldest senior brother. However, trust has nothing to do with strength. We trust eldest senior brother because we need someone who can shoulder everyone's trust, and eldest senior brother is the most suitable candidate for this position. As for you, we don't even know who you are. Wang Lu opened his mouth, but just as he was about to speak, he was choked back by Kai Xia. Don't use the illegitimate child of the sect leader to perfunctory us. Only that idiot Ouyang Shang would believe that kind of idiotic reason. Ouyang Shang tilted his head. I say, Kai Xia, shut up. Kai Xia's attitude was firm, so it was inconvenient for Ouyang Shang to speak. However, after thinking about it, Wang Lu really couldn't find a reasonable explanation. It was not impossible to expose the identity of a time traveler, but in fact, this reason was more bizarre than illegitimate child, and only Ouyang Shang could accept it without any obstacle. If it was Kai Xia. Enough. In the end, it was Ouyang Shang who came forward and suppressed Kai Xia's doubt with the authority of the Big Brother. If you still regard me as the Big Brother, then there's no need to discuss this matter anymore. When the elders come, we will give everyone an explanation. What do you think, junior sister Kai Xia? When it came to this, Kai Xia could not be stubborn and had to reluctantly agree. For the next 3 days, the disciples of Spirit Sword sect were in a state of panic, jittery at the slightest sound, and miserable. Wang Lu, who was guarding outside the Dragon Palace, was even more tense, not daring to relax for a moment. However, surprisingly, in these 3 days, the demon race never made their move, not even the slightest probe, which completely turned the high vigilance of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect into a false alarm. When the light of dawn rose from the horizon on the 4th day, Wang Lu couldn't believe that 3 days had passed. Wait a minute, 3 days have passed. Wang Lu suddenly thought of a huge blind spot, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on his back. Chapter 523. Hey, junior brother Wang Lu, why are you back? In the main hall of the Dragon Palace, there were already more than 70 disciples of Spirit Sword sect sitting cross-legged in meditation. In the past 3 days, many people had come to the Blessed Fountain Base. The Blessed Fountain Base was open to everyone, but as long as anyone came in, they must be restrained by the array in the main hall of the Dragon Palace. Even Ouyang Shang was no exception. At the same time, Wang Lu was isolated outside. According to the agreement, he was not restricted by the array, but he could not enter the main hall at will. If there was a violation, in theory, he could be regarded as an enemy, and Ouyang Shang would launch the array in the Dragon Palace to suppress or even kill him. This was an insurance measure. Wang Lu was alone outside the hall. For the people inside the hall, he was equivalent to a huge source of risk. Because when the demon race invaded, he would bear the brunt. At the same time, he had the authority to move freely. Once he fell into the enemy's hands, the threat to the people inside the hall would be enormous. Taking into account that when there was a variable, the dozens of people inside the hall could not be buried together with him. So there was a limit on the scope of action of Wang Lu. Of course, it was also taken into account that if the worst situation happened, the people inside the hall must not panic. Ouyang Shang alone was enough to be responsible for confronting the enemy. If other people made a move, it would only give the enemy a chance to fish in troubled waters. And if even Ouyang Shang, who was in control of the Dragon Palace, couldn't be suppressed, then there was no point in maintaining order. Everyone would just go all out and escape. Fortunately, in the past 3 days, the worst situation had never happened. It was unbelievably calm. However, after 3 days, everyone saw Wang Lu walk into the hall with a heavy face. Kai Xia, who was the closest to the entrance of the hall, thought that the elder of the Lingjian school had arrived. She turned around in surprise, but only saw the figure of Wang Lu. In a twinkling of an eye, her heart sank as she thought of the worst possibility. What was even worse was that her big brother Ouyang Shang seemed to have not reacted yet. He was still greeting her with a pleasant face. "Big brother, didn't you say that once there was a problem with Wang Lu, you would be the first to suppress him? How could you be so soft-hearted at the last moment? Who is this guy of unknown origin? Why are you making an exception for him again and again?" Seeing her big brother's eyes full of trust, Kai Xiao's heart even had a trace of jealousy, but she also knew that her big brother must have his own reasons, so she had to forcibly restrain the impatience in her heart. "Junior brother Wang Lu, what's the matter?" Ouyang Shang was calm and collected, but inwardly, he was secretly vigilant. He did trust Wang Lu, but this trust was not unlimited. When he asked, he had actually secretly activated the arrangement in the hall of the Dragon Palace. If Wang Lu really had any abnormality, he would never show any mercy. Wang Lu was too strong, and showing mercy was suicidal. However, Wang Lu ignored the entanglement in everyone's hearts and strode in front of Ouyang Shang. He went straight to the point and said, "About the reinforcements from the sect coming in 3 days, how did you confirm it?" When Ouyang Shang heard this, he could not help but be startled. He immediately stood up and said, "Come inside with me and talk in detail." At the same time, Ouyang Shang waved his hand at the junior brothers and sisters who were looking at him with concern. "Everyone, don't be impatient." After returning to the bedroom, Ouyang Shang asked, "Do you suspect that the letter is fake and the sect's reinforcements won't come?" "I have confirmed the authenticity of the letter. Whether it is the paper of the letter or the way it was written, or the immortal spirit imprint left on the letter, there is no mistake." Ouyang Shang said and even directly took out the letter to confirm its authenticity on the spot. Wang Lu said, "Of course it's not wrong. If even this detail is not done well, then even Yang Fei and Kai Xia can't be deceived. How could they be deceived by our eyes? But this confirmation itself has a huge loophole. Are you sure what you see is true?" "I just figured this out. Big brother, a few days ago in the Ghost Weeping Forest, did you and I distinguish the authenticity of Li Shi?" "You mean, the other party's disguise skill can be applied to the letter and is beyond our ability to identify? I have no evidence for this inference, but in fact, I don't need evidence. Because there is a more powerful proof. Although I haven't been in contact with the elders of Spirit Sword Sect in this era, I think a group of people who can design the management trainee program, in any case, are not conservative people, right?" Ouyang Shang said, "Yes, this group of elders can be said to be the most radical group in Lingjian school in the past 1,000 years. Therefore, when they receive the letter asking for help, the first thing they should do is to send 1 or 2 powerful elders and rush to Blessed Fountain to save people at all costs, instead of integrating the team and asking us to wait here for 3 days. According to the real historical timeline, the group of elders of Lingjian school was completely annihilated, but some of the disciples survived by chance. Thus, the elders of Spirit Sword Sect value the safety of the Golden Generation more than themselves. At this time, they would not care if rashly rescuing people would put themselves in danger." "That's right." Ouyang Shang's face also turned gloomy. "At least, it's impossible for Elder Sword to let us fend for ourselves in such a dangerous place for 3 days. In fact, I have also considered this before, so I didn't rush to report everything to the sect. Otherwise, it would provoke Elder Sword, which is likely to directly detonate the Black Tide. But in any case, the core of the management trainee program is that the overall risk is controllable, and the appearance of the demon race has undoubtedly broken this. At this point, Ouyang Shang's point of view has been completely consistent with Wang Lu's. It seems that we've fallen into a trap. Ouyang Shang said, "We've wasted 3 precious days in vain." Wang Lu said, 3 days is not fatal. The fatal thing is that we mistakenly thought that the reinforcements were coming, so we gathered most of the junior brothers and sisters in the savage land here. This is simply a good opportunity for the other party to catch us all in one fell swoop. What do you think the opponent will do next? Or use possession and other means to stir up internal strife? Wang Lu hatefully said, "Possession and possession? I'm afraid this is our biggest mistake. Only now do I understand that the other party's possession and possession technique is not that effective. There must be great restrictions when using it. The other party is deliberately mystifying us, deceiving us into binding our hands and feet. Just imagine, if the demon race really has such a sharp method, not to mention that it was never used in the previous 2 great wars of immortals and demons, which has never been recorded in the history books. Just on our way here, there are countless opportunities for him to make his move, so why not use it? Moreover, think about it carefully, he made his move 3 times. The first time was to control Wang Donghua to lure and kill Shen Yiwen, the second time was to control Li Shi to poison him, and the third time was to control Lu Xian to attack Wang Wu. These 3 times, the time of control is shorter and the effect is worse. I don't think this is just a coincidence. Ouyang Shang said. The other party's technique is very clever. He used the least amount of strength to disrupt our position. However, as you said, possession and possession is not enough to be his killing move. Moreover, after we see through it, the effect will only be worse. What do you think he will do next? I don't know. Wang Lu calmly said. I have never been able to guess the thoughts of the opponent. From his behavior, there are a lot of contradictions, but we can't really treat the opponent as a brainless person. It's very troublesome. Ouyang Shang said, don't worry, sort out your current problem and let's think about it together. The first question, what is the purpose of the enemy? In theory, the only person that the demon race really needs to kill is me. As long as I'm killed, they can completely detonate the black tide. But now, they have shifted their target to other people. To say that they hate the house and its crow is putting the cart before the horse. Ouyang Shang pondered for a long time and then said, perhaps the importance of the black tide to the demon race has declined? Did the demon king himself give up the intention to detonate the complete form of the black tide? It doesn't make sense. One of the most important purposes of creating the black tide with the dream building technique is to kill Fenrir. The incomplete form of the black tide may be able to defeat her, but it can't kill her. As long as Fenrir is not dead, the blockade of the 9th depth prison is unbreakable. It's tantamount to squandering his power in vain. Are you sure you have to kill Fenrir in order to release the 9th depth prison? Wang Lu said, the so-called 9th depth prison is actually the independent space inside Fenrir's body. In the Western continent mythology, this world-destroying demonic wolf can devour the heaven and earth by relying on this innate independent space. This space is naturally highly enclosed. Rumor has it that even the gods cannot come out after being devoured. I don't think that the Demon King can be stronger than the gods of the Western continent. But do you remember in the demon spirit dream, he personally opened a window and let us see the phenomenon of the demon race returning to their ancestors in the desert tribe? If the 9th depth prison is really completely isolated from the outside world, how could he penetrate his power to the outside world? Or, if his body is trapped in the 9th depth prison, why is there a demon spirit dream in the outside world that is connected to his soul? Wang Lu said, the dream-building technique is indeed beyond common sense. According to my understanding of it, it does have the effect of breaking the space blockade to a certain extent, but only part of the soul can transcend the blockade. In that case, what is haunting us right now is his remnant soul. Is there a need for that? Tearing his own soul apart and leaving his body and most of his soul in the 9th abyss prison is a suicidal move. But it's also the most rational thing to do. The black tide has been sealed by you, and it won't be able to kill you in a short time. In that case, giving up on the irredeemable part is the best choice. Are you sure he has no other tricks up his sleeve? Doesn't he have any other subordinates in the savage land? I'm not entirely sure, but if he really has other subordinates, there's no reason for them to stay dormant for 2,000 years. At least they could be used to strengthen the scale of the demon spirit dream, right? Also, I learned about it during my time in the desert oasis. Those devils never knew that they had allies in the savage land, and to say that he has other subordinates, at least I don't agree. Wang Lu smiled. It's rare for us to have a slight difference of opinion, but this time I'll listen to you. In short, according to the reasoning just now, we can guess that the Demon King has already escaped from the ninth depth prison at an extremely heavy price. But there's still one problem that hasn't been solved. He finally escaped with great difficulty, so why does he have to cling to us juniors? Isn't it better to honestly recuperate in the savage land and make a comeback after thousands of years? He has waited for 2,000 years. Can't he wait for another few hundred years? Ouyang Shang's eyes flickered a little. I guess he probably really can't wait. Chapter 524. Can't wait. Wang Lu was curious about Ouyang Shang's speculation. It's very simple. With the potential of the Golden Generation, it will be meaningless even if he makes a comeback after a few hundred years. Haha, what a confident statement. Not just confident, but the other party also believes in it. Do you still remember the conversation with him in the demon's spirit dream? I remember every sentence. Which sentence are you asking about? Ouyang Shang said. The sentence about being blessed with great luck. At that time, I fled desperately with the earth escape technique. He repeatedly chased after me without any results, so he sighed that I had luck and was blessed by the earth, so I was particularly slippery. Wang Lu said, and then? At that time, his attention was always locked on me. Of course, the main force of the escape at that time was you. The entire demon spirit dream was basically a stage for you to fight alone. Of course, he had to focus on you. Not just that. You didn't face his attention at that time, so you didn't feel some subtle things. Of course, I only found it strange after thinking about it. When he spoke at that time, the focus was actually on luck. Luck on my body? Wang Lu frowned and began to think about the possible meaning of this sentence. First of all, do you really believe in luck? I'm skeptical. Ouyang Shang said, I believe in luck. Some people are born with good luck, and some people have bad luck. This is objectively visible, and people can't help but believe it. But luck is something unpredictable. So far, there is no perfect theory that can explain it well, so it's difficult to win people's trust. I've seen many so-called people with great luck rise to the top, but they died in the hands of others. The so-called luck is often the opposite of karma. The winner is king, and the loser is in the wrong. Those who succeed have luck, and those who don't succeed have little luck. This obviously doesn't make sense. Ouyang Shang even laughed at himself. For example, who has luck, didn't I also die tragically in the black tide in your history line? But at that moment, I was sure that at least the Demon King himself was serious about luck. When he said those words, his killing intent was much stronger than usual. He seems to be particularly sensitive to the matter of luck, and in the Golden Generation, I'm not the only one who has luck. Hearing this, Wang Lu also felt that it was strange. So you think that after he tore apart his soul to escape, he continued to pester us because we have the so-called luck that he hates so much? That's strange. What exactly is this karmic luck that he cares so much about? I don't know either, but after thinking about what the Demon King said, I have a guess. Ouyang Shang said, his original words were, it turns out that you are blessed by destiny, the whole earth is protecting you, no wonder you are so slippery. Wang Lu asked, the blessing of providence and the blessing of the earth have a causal relationship, or at least a parallel relationship. Ouyang Shang said, in fact, I have always been very strange. Whether it is my spirit root attribute or my cultivation method, there is no special skill to communicate with the earth, but the effect of my earth element spell is particularly good. Even the elders can't come up with a reasonable explanation. Because Mother Earth is sticking to you? I think it's because of the so-called karmic luck. Ouyang Shang said and stretched out his palm in a trance. The pure king pill true chi gently trembled in his palm. Suddenly, a rock thorn appeared out of thin air and pointed upward. See, actually, I just used sand gathering, not rock all, but the effect. Ouyang Shang shook his head and stretched out his hand to shake the rock all away. If it weren't for the fact that I can still accurately control the effect of the spell when I have the intention to control it, this would simply be the perfect example of spell out of control. When I first learned the 5-element spell, I once thought that one of the elders was joking with me so that I have full confidence in my cultivation. But later, when I saw that they all expressed their disbelief, I knew that it was not their doing. Wang Lu asked with interest, do you think it's because of the karmic luck? Ouyang Shang said, yes, and I think this is the truth of the karmic luck. Suppose we regard the 9 regions as a huge creature with its own consciousness. Then the so-called karmic luck is the reward she gives to some people who have the same appetite as her. Wang Lu pondered for a moment and said, regard the entire 9 regions as an independent creature? That's an interesting idea, but people often say that the world is heartless and treats all living things as straw dogs, right? I think perhaps it's not that the world is really cold-blooded and heartless, but rather for the world, any creature is too small to attract her attention, just like how mortals don't pay attention to the ants under their feet when they walk on the road. But if there's a reason for her to start to care about these ants, the so-called great karmic luck comes into being. Wang Lu thought for a moment and said, that makes sense. So far, the 2 people with the strongest karmic luck in history, Immortal Qin and Great Ancestor Dushing, both came into being at the right time and saved the crisis that endangered the entire continent. The rapid rise of Immortal Qin and the unification of 9 regions was based on the many years of war in 9 regions. The feng shui nodes were frequently used as strategic weapons to detonate, which shocked 9 regions. At that time, if Immortal Qin didn't end the war, 9 regions would probably be fragmented by the cultivators. Needless to say, Great Ancestor Dushing was the leader of the Great War of Immortals and Demons. If he didn't drive the invaders of the demon world back to their hometown, 9 regions wouldn't be called 9 regions. Ouyang Shang said, from the historical records, the rise of those 2 seniors is simply unimaginable, and it's not just the effect of Void Spirit Root. Wang Lu thought so too. Void Spirit Root is indeed trash. Huh. It's okay, I'm just acting cute. Big brother, please continue. So I thought since every time 9 regions is in danger, there will always be such a person with great luck, it seems to confirm my guess. And it's not difficult to explain those who died prematurely in the middle of their rise. The so-called karmic luck is just an investment in a person by 9 regions, and the investment is risky. Wang Lu nodded and said, that's right, your conjecture can indeed explain a lot of things, including that guy's hostility to us. If the golden generation is favored by 9 regions, then it's natural for him, as a demon, to regard the golden generation as a thorn in his side. But this brings me to my second question. Who exactly is he? Is he really a demon? Ha! Do you doubt his identity as a demon? Yes, the biggest doubt is that the demon jade has no effect on him. Moreover, his behavior is also very controversial among the demon race. His style of doing things is not the style of the demon race. As Wang Lu said that, he could not help but think of the dying cry of a certain howling demon on the mountain of corpses in the demon world. Ouyang Shang asked, not the demon king of the demon race? Don't you think this setting is too strange? Not bad. I also know that there is a proletarian party under the leadership of the bourgeoisie. Hey, don't talk nonsense. When you said that just now, I seem to have seen your death omen. Then let me put it another way. I also know that there is a Western continent regime under the leadership of the Kunlun slaves. If that's the case, it seems to be a lot more lofty. It's indeed an interesting inference. So, in your opinion, if he's not a demon, what kind of person is he? To be able to deceive the whole demon world, it's impossible for him to be as simple as a lucky speculator, right? Of course not. If he's just an ordinary speculator, after stealing the Demon King's position, he would enjoy glory, splendor, wealth and rank. Instead of continuing to be the king of the new demon world, he directly led the demons to a dead end. Then, he turned around and led some of the survivors to 9 regions through some unknown method. He was also not at ease in 9 regions, so he deliberately went to the Western continent to catch a world-destroying demon wolf. And then he was suppressed by it for 2,000 years without losing his motivation. His behavior is completely unpredictable. In my opinion, there's some involuntary meaning to it. Ouyang Shang nodded. It's indeed not like a normal person's behavior, because I can't find his interest in doing things at all. After swindling the demon race, he turned around and swindled the 9 regions. What is his position? What are his benefits? It's indeed more like being forced by something to do something to meet the requirements of the other party. But he's already the king of the demon world, so who else in the world has the qualification to force him? What's the benefit of forcing him to do these things? Wang Lu sneered. Perhaps it's the legendary demon god? Ouyang Shang shook his head. Demon god? It's as far-fetched as the true immortals in 9 regions. At least in the history, I've never heard of a demon god directly coming down to the lower realm to interfere. In 9 regions, the descent of true immortals only exists in legends. Legend has it that immortal Qin and great ancestor Dushing were passed down by the true immortals, that's all. Whether it's the immortal world or the demon god world, it seems more like a road of no return. That's strange. Wang Lu said, if it's not the demon god, then who is it? Could it be? Speaking to this, Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang looked at each other in dismay and could not help but think of an unimaginable answer. However, before the two of them could say this answer, a cold voice suddenly came in. You guys know too much. Sure enough, you guys have to die. This voice was not strange to the two of them. In the demon's spirit dream, they had heard him speak more than once. It was just that, in any case, it was unexpected that he would actually appear here, in the underwater fortress that had been carefully reinforced by the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect. Since you're here, don't leave. Ouyang Shang immediately launched the protective array of the Dragon Palace. The huge palace issued a muffled rumbling sound. The palace, which was built at the bottom of the water, slowly sank under the effect of the array. The silt that had been immersed in the blessed fountain for thousands of years surged and covered the palace. The flood dragon of Blessed Fountain had operated its own palace for thousands of years, and one of the important assets that it had accumulated was the silt at the bottom of the river, each of which had been purified by its demonic energy. And now, under the transformation of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect, it had an incredible mysterious effect. Once it was activated, even a Taoist master of deity stage would not be able to break its defense. However, just as the silt at the bottom of the river was about to completely cover the palace, Ouyang Shang suddenly felt that the king pill in his jade mansion jumped uncontrollably. Oh no! To control the array of the Dragon Palace with the power of one person, this put forward an extremely high requirement for Ouyang Shang's magical power. With his king pill stage, it was a kind of leapfrogging challenge, during which it could be said that even the slightest mistake was not allowed. Right now, the jump of the king pill in his jade mansion seemed small, but at the critical moment of the activation of the array, it actually affected the whole body. Boom! At the top of the Dragon Palace, a huge force suddenly stagnated and then burst out with a loud bang, and the 10,000 tons of river water poured in. The great array that the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect relied on to defend themselves was instantly broken. Chapter 525. Mend the Array. Ouyang Shang remained calm in the face of danger. When the Dragon Palace shook and the array disintegrated, a stream of King Pill True Qi rose from his throat and turned into a majestic order that spread throughout the palace. At the same time, the more than 70 cultivators of Spirit Sword sect in the main hall opened their eyes and then acted in an orderly manner. The current situation had already been discussed at the very beginning. When the situation was critical and the hidden danger of civil strife was no longer the biggest problem, Ouyang Shang directly ordered everyone to lift the restraint and then fully cooperate with his action. For example, right now, there was no greater crisis than the river pouring down from above. The river itself was not terrible, but the black matter dissolved in the river gave everyone a strong sense of crisis. After hearing Ouyang Shang's order, the disciples of Spirit Sword sect immediately followed the prescribed order. Each found a position in the array, and then output their power to repair the palace. This underwater palace was the crystallization of the flood dragon's lifelong management, which had been honed into an existence close to that of a magical treasure. At this time, with the infusion of magical power from the cultivators, the hole in the dome began to slowly recover, and the silt at the bottom of the river that was shaken away also gathered again. The overall quality of the Golden Generation was very high, and their execution ability was even comparable to that of the group of crazy cultivators of Royal Soldier sect who regarded discipline as their name. After Ouyang Shang gave the order, the 70 people used only the time of 3 breaths to completely seal the hole in the dome. During this time, the river water that gushed into the hall was only enough to reach the ankles of a person. After a cup of tea's time, the entire Dragon Palace array was repaired. Although there were flaws compared to the perfect state, the array had resumed its operation, and its power was endless. It was only a matter of time before it was completely restored. Big brother, what happened? After the array was repaired, Kaixia couldn't help but ask. She was particularly sensitive to the change of magical power. Just now, the shocking change in the Dragon Palace was an accident caused by Ouyang Shang's failure to control his power. However, according to her understanding of Ouyang Shang, that kind of mistake was simply unimaginable. Although Big Brother's character was too amusing, his immortal cultivation was flawless. Perhaps because of the limitation of his immortal cultivation time, there were many things that he could not do, but to say that his control error led to such an accident, it was really unbelievable. However, just as Kai Xia stood up to ask, Yang Fei suddenly exclaimed from behind, "Be careful." "Be careful?" Kai Xia was surprised and quickly turned her head. However, with her Shudon stage cultivation base, she could only see a faint shadow standing behind her. Black shadow, what is this thing? Where did it come from? He could vaguely see that the black shadow had a humanoid shape. From the corner of his eyes, he could see that it was pouncing towards him. Kai Xia intuitively felt that if she was touched by this thing, she would be in great trouble. In a hurry, she hurriedly raised her protective sword Qi, but she was a moment too late. Yang Fei was the first to discover the black shadow. Although the flying sword had already shot out from his palm, it was also too late to stop the black shadow. The shadow had already touched Kai Xia's shoulder. All of a sudden, her world came to a standstill, and everything in front of her stopped moving. She knew that this was not a real stop in time, but that her primordial spirit had been forcefully suppressed by some incredibly powerful existence, cutting off all contact with the outside world. At the same time, a cold and gloomy sensation spread from his shoulder. It was as if everything it touched no longer belonged to him. Based on the speed at which it was spreading, it would only take an instant for him to no longer be himself. Am I going to die? The next moment, the dark world suddenly shattered, and everything that was still resumed its flow. Kai Xia was stunned. She only felt that her shoulder seemed to be a little light, and then there was a heart-wrenching pain. Her shoulder was broken, and a piece of her smooth shoulder seemed to have been dug out, revealing her pale bones and blood gushing out like a fountain. At the same time, in the corridor on the side of the hall, Wang Lu gently retracted his right sword finger. Phew! Fortunately, I made it in time. Needless to say, only Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi could be faster than Yang Fei's flying sword, and even faster than Kai Xia's subconscious reaction. Even the golden generation of Lingjian school could not reach the wonders of an immortal-level cultivation method. However, this sword strike was too sudden, and the shadow just now also disappeared in a flash. Most of the people around didn't even realize what had happened. Thus, they all cast shocked and puzzled eyes. Among them, there were even a few people who were slow to react and showed naked hostility to Wang Lu. Idiot, instead of baring your teeth at me, it's better to think of a way to heal her first. Although I have deliberately suppressed the lethality, in order to remove the poison and not leave any hidden danger, I can't hold back too much. She was injured by the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, which can't be recovered by natural recovery. Wang Lu pointed his finger at the weak-looking Kai Xia. At the same time, 3 or 4 disciples of Spirit Sword Sect who were good at medical treatment rushed over to heal her. With the help of elixirs, talismans, and magical tools, the broken shoulder began to slowly heal. What exactly happened? Kai Xia endured the pain and asked, "What was that shadow just now?" Wang Lu shook his head. In short, it's not a good thing. It should have seeped in from the polluted river. Everyone must be careful around. As soon as he said that, Wang Lu casually pointed behind him, and a sharp sword Qi blasted the shadow that had just been condensed. The other party can appear and disappear unpredictably. What about Big Brother? Kai Xia asked. Wang Lu said, he's running the array to prevent more river water from flowing down. He can't leave right now, so I'm in charge of this place. What? Do you guys want to protest against this? Kai Xia shook her head. No. Although I don't like you, I also understand the priorities, so please give the order. The first thing is to clean up the sewage. Wang Lu said, all the sewage must be cleaned up, including the places that have been contaminated by the sewage. Don't miss anything. What about the cleaning method? Exorcism. Treat these things as demons. The method of exorcism should have been taught by the sect, right? Although the great war of immortals and demons has passed for 2,000 years, in my impression, this is one of the compulsory courses in Tang Cloud Hall. I don't know if it was still so important 100 years ago. Just now that was done by the demons? Kai Xia didn't hear what Wang Lu said to himself, but the first sentence surprised her. Didn't they all die in the desert? The ghosts won't go away. In short, I'm afraid we'll have to spend a long time dealing with the demons. Wang Lu said, leaned down, scooped up the sewage with his palm, and then swallowed it under the horrified eyes of everyone. Tisk, it's really a familiar taste. Black tide. We meet again. Sure enough, it's the black tide. Unexpectedly, that guy only has a remnant soul left, but he can still bring out the black tide. During this time, he used all kinds of means to delay time, just for this big show of the black tide besieging the city. Fortunately, it's just a small black tide that has shrunk by more than 90%. If it's the big black tide we saw in the desert, even if it's not enough to destroy Fenrir, at least it can easily destroy our group. Yes, fortunately, the big black tide has been blocked by you. In a simple bedroom, Ouyang Shang sat cross-legged, eyes closed, and softly sighed with emotion. His whole body was brimming with an elegant and otherworldly immortal aura. This was a small amount of uncontrollable energy that escaped when he fully operated the King Pill. And for Ouyang Shang to go all out to the extent that he could not perfectly control the magical power in his body, it could be seen how difficult the current situation was. Wang Lu asked, "What's the situation outside?" "Not so good. The blessed fountain has been completely polluted by the black tide. Fortunately, the source of pollution is still above the water surface, and the speed of repairing the array is fast enough. Otherwise, if more spring water poured down, it would not be as simple as it is now. I have now mobilized all of them to do a big cleaning, which can also be regarded as a warm-up. Next, do you want to rush out?" Ouyang Shang pondered for a moment. "It's difficult. Judging from the current situation, at most, you and I can rush out. It's very difficult for the others to resist the black tide. Unless your non-phase sword defense can maintain its highest strength and expand to more than 100 feet. Wang Lu said, "When my King Pill is at its peak, I can consider giving it a try. In short, right now we can only defend and then think of other ways. However, this may be an unprecedented protracted war. How long do you think this base can last if it is completely wrapped by the black tide?" Ouyang Shang was silent for a moment, and then said, "At most 3 years. After all, this dragon palace is just the work of a wild flood dragon that has not received systematic training, so its innate foundation is insufficient. And our time here is short, so there is no time to make a comprehensive transformation. Even if I overdraft the foundation of the dragon palace, it can only last for 3 years at most. And the premise is that the accident just now cannot happen again. Rest assured, if something happens again, I will be responsible for fixing the situation. It won't be like what happened just now where the roof was blown off. Without you, I wouldn't dare to make a 3 years guarantee. 3 years, to reverse the situation in 3 years, the key is those people outside. You are more familiar with them than me. What do you think? It's just 3 years, and we're trapped in a place of death. It's not enough in any case. But with this dragon palace and the black tide as nutrients, we might be able to do it." Ouyang Shang said, "It's just that it'll be a little harder and more dangerous." Speaking of this, even Ouyang Shang himself laughed. Compared with the tragedy of the Lingjian school in the real history line, what was a little hard work and danger? It was already very good. The power of the black tide was not even 1/10 of its peak, and the demon king from an unknown place was only a remnant soul. In the face of such a situation, what else was there to be dissatisfied with? Humph, since that devil couldn't bring down my line of defense in the first place. In the next 3 years, let him see the potential of the golden generation. Within 3 years, I want this dragon palace to be completely filled with King Pill. Chapter 526. In immortal cultivation, one must avoid being anxious for quick results. If the foundation was not solid, the future achievements would be limited. For most orthodox cultivators, this was basically common sense that was repeatedly taught by their teachers at the beginning of their cultivation. However, common sense was meant to be broken. Our current situation, I think I have made it very clear. In the main hall of the Dragon Palace, Ouyang Shang's voice echoed faintly, but it was like a heavy hammer that hit everyone's heart. Black tide, sewage, 3-year limit. Even though everyone present was an elite, the heavy pressure could not be ignored. But we're still far from the point of despair. 3 years is too much for us. From now on, everyone's top priority is to break through your current realm. Regardless of the cost, you must condense your gold core within 3 years. What? Before his voice fell, there was an uproar in the hall. There was no doubt about Ouyang Shang's prestige, but because of his personality, his junior brothers and sisters were not afraid of him. At this time, when they heard about the King Pill in 3 years, they were suddenly surprised. "Senior brother, you are being funny again. 3 years to condense the king pill. Do you think it is instant noodles? 3 years to condense the king pill. Requesting the support of the holy elixir of the immortal world. If it is senior brother Yang Fei or senior brother Zhang Shang, it doesn't matter. They are originally at the peak of Shudan, so it doesn't matter if they cross the tribulation earlier. But for us who are still lingering at low-level Shudan, to be able to advance to middle-level Shudan after 3 years, we already have to double our efforts. The king pill is simply a joke. Alas, I haven't even reached Shudan. Isn't there even more hope? After the chaotic discussion continued for a while, Ouyang Shang opened his mouth again. As soon as he opened his mouth, the discussion below suddenly stopped. No one wants you to condense a full king pill. As long as it is a king pill, even if it is 18k gold, or even jinkala. As a result, as soon as his voice fell, the people below began to quarrel again. Even jinkala counts? That is already a pill slag, okay? Is the golden generation going to become the golden generation? Ouyang Shang sighed. Even if it's pill dregs, it's still a type of king pill. In short, in 3 years, I want to see 73 real king pills. Otherwise, this place will be our burial ground. Hearing this, the crowd quietened down again. That was also true. Now was not the time to be picky. Outside the Dragon Palace, the huge black tide had completely polluted the blessed fountain. The strong corrosion and insidious poison could not be resisted without the protection of the king pill realm. Just now, during the cleaning, although everyone was fully focused, there were still 2 disciples of Spirit Sword sect who were accidentally injured by the power contained in the sewage. And if they wanted to break out of the Dragon Palace, the pressure they faced would increase by hundreds of times. Except for a few people, the rest of them would only have a dead end. 3 years of time was indeed able to allow these elites present here to improve greatly. Perhaps they would comprehend the true essence of sword insight a step further, attain mastery in a certain cultivation technique, or refine an origin magic treasure with extraordinary might. But in this hopeless situation before them, all of these were only fleeting clouds. Logically speaking, there was indeed nothing more effective than a golden core. Even if it was just jinkala. King Pill was 2 different realms. The title of Taoist master was only granted to those in the King Pill realm. This habit had its own profound meaning. In the immortal cultivation such as body forging, chi cultivating, foundation establishment, such division of cultivation did not exist in the earliest age of desolation. At that time, everyone's cultivation method was very different, and the path of cultivation was unique. Thus, it was difficult to have a unified standard for the results of cultivation. Until tens of thousands of years later, people gradually discovered that it seemed that as long as one's cultivation reached a certain level, they would have a special ability that they had never had before. This made the difference between the strength of the cultivator and the previous cultivator, and thus there was the division of realms. Among them, the King Pill level was an important watershed. Perhaps for those talented cultivators from the big sects, the King Pill level was just a matter of time, and their goal should be more long-term. However, for the vast majority of cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, as long as they could become the King Pill, even if it was just Jinkala, they would die without regret. Moreover, for the elites present, the quality of the King Pill was not good enough, but they could use various methods to make up for it. At worst, under the care of the elders, they could break the pill and recast it. Although it was difficult and arduous, it was actually very beneficial. In short, the 73 Jinkala tactic was indeed feasible. But, Big Brother, even if we lower the standard and use Jinkala, but as the saying goes, even a clever housewife can't cook without rice. Although this place is located at the node of the feng shui line, this spiritual vein itself is not a top-notch good. There are more than 70 of us, so it's even more difficult to make ends meet. It's enough to maintain our daily cultivation, but if we want to break through to the next realm, the most important thing is to accumulate more. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is several times more than usual, and this spiritual vein is simply not enough. Kai Xia raised a very realistic question. Of course, relying on the spiritual vein alone is not enough, but in addition to the spiritual vein, we still have this. Ouyang Shang said and pointed to the top of his head. Everyone looked up and saw that the dome of the Dragon Palace was slightly trembling under the impact of the sewage of Blessed Fountain. Big Brother, you don't want us to borrow that power, do you? Kai Xia's eyes widened in disbelief. That's a deadly poison. Ouyang Shang said with a smile. The fierce toxicity shows that it contains a lot of energy. Our current conditions are very difficult, so don't be picky. But this is too. Everyone felt that it was difficult to accept. In principle, it was not impossible to absorb the power of the black tide, but to turn the black tide, which was highly toxic to the human body, into the immortal spirit energy that could promote cultivation, this not only required the black tide processing skill to reach the peak, but also required the cultivator to pay a heavy price. Mixing the black tide into the king pill, which symbolized the essence of a cultivator, was almost like falling into the devil's path. Even if the pill was broken and recast in the future, the risk would increase exponentially. While everyone was hesitating, Wang Lu opened his mouth. You young people are born to be the proud sons of heaven. In the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, you have received the best elite education. You have never really suffered, and you have never experienced the difficulty of the lack of resources. Do you know that when there is a famine in the mortal world, even if it's horse dung, there are still people who eat it? Wang Lu said. In order to enhance his credibility, he showed a heavy expression, as if he was in personal pain. The disciples of Spirit Sword sect in the hall were stunned. Thinking that when the mortal world was in dire straits, the suffering people went to eat that kind of thing. It really made people speechless. Even Ouyang Shang didn't expect that Wang Lu seemed to have this kind of experience. He couldn't help but curiously ask, is it delicious? You'll know when you taste it. Wang Lu really wanted to slap him. In short, your current situation is no different from those dying, starving people. Without the power of the black tide, you can't become the king pill. And if you can't become the king pill, you can't break through the siege of the black tide, and you can't save your own life. So, the thing is right there, whether you want to eat it or not, think about it yourself. You've already become the king pill, of course, you can say that it's not important. Kai Xia somewhat disapprovingly shook her head. Wang Lu turned his head and looked at her. What you said is reasonable. When it comes to eating shit, if a leader just shouts the slogan but doesn't take the lead, it's tantamount to acting like a hooligan. So, although I've already shown it to you before, now I'll let you see it again. With that, Wang Lu made a gesture to Ouyang Shang. The latter was slightly surprised, but then nodded and raised his right index finger. Suddenly, a gap appeared on the dome of the Dragon Palace, and the black water of Blessed Fountain poured down like a waterfall from the gap. In the process of falling, the black fog rolled up from the dirty water, as if there were layers upon layers of ghostly shadows. Wang Lu sneered and then flew up. When he was in mid-air, the king pill in his jade mansion suddenly shrank inward, and the characteristic of the void spirit root was brought out to the limit. In the main hall, more than 70 disciples of Spirit Sword sect felt as if there was a terrifying black hole above their heads, which crazily absorbed the nearby energy. The momentum was so fierce that it even caused their jade mansion to slightly tremble. The dirty water that poured down from the top of their heads was involuntarily rolled into a whirlpool, which was involuntarily sucked by Wang Lu. The shape was like a huge funnel, and the end of it was Wang Lu's open mouth. In just a moment, the dirty water that poured down from the dome of the Dragon Palace was completely absorbed into Wang Lu's body. The dirty water that was enough to drown a room only made Wang Lu's abdomen slightly swollen, which showed the authentic Sumeru in a mustard seed skill. However, the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect who had just done a thorough cleaning were very clear that the key to the matter was not absorption, but suppression. It could be said that he had just swallowed a battalion of murderous shadows into his stomach. What should they do next? Hee hee. Wang Lu chuckled indifferently and then closed his eyes. His chest and abdomen suddenly shrank inward, using brute force to squeeze the dirty water that had been absorbed into his body. For the power of the black tide, Wang Lu actually had no special method to digest it. The only thing he could do was to break everything with brute force. The next moment, everyone heard the sound of something being crushed by the pressure, and then a thin black fog sprayed out from the pores of Wang Lu's body. As soon as the black fog left his body, it formed a broken human figure, which fled in panic. Come back. With that, Wang Lu beckoned with his hand, and the king pill in his jade mansion once again burst out a suction force, which sucked that broken shadow into his body, and then there was no longer any sound. See. We've finished eating, and it's a CD. Now it's your turn. Wang Lu said and then looked at the people in the hall with bad intentions. Those who were touched by his eyes couldn't help but lower their head or turn their eyes away, not daring to look straight at him. For a person who ate special food so boldly, it was indeed a bit difficult to look straight at him. But in any case, After Wang Lu took the lead in demonstrating, everyone was not so resistant to using the black tide. Although there was no way to be like Wang Lu, who could digest it cleanly, but, if there was no other choice, then they had to face it bravely. Chapter 527. A year's time passed in an instant. For the disciples of Spirit Sword sect who were besieged in the Dragon Palace, the past year was like a dream, a complete nightmare. From the first day of the dream, they had experienced inhumane treatment. Not only did they have to be trained by their big brother by various magical means to speed up their cultivation, but they also had to take the medicine extracted from the black tide day and night under the supervision of Wang Lu. That taste was really worse than death, because the process of making the medicine was really desperate. Considering that it was impossible for ordinary people to eat the black tide raw like Wang Lu through the invincible digestive power of non-phase method. In order to use the energy of the black tide must be processed with high precision. However, to process the highly toxic black tide into a pill that other cultivators of Spirit Sword sect could digest, this kind of heaven-defying unique skill could only be done by Wang Lu. He first swallowed a large amount of black tide sewage, digested it into his own power, and then discharged it. After Wang Lu's digestive transformation, the highly toxic sewage would turn into a thick amber-colored slurry, slightly turbid, and mixed with a strange smell. In general, whether it was the taste or the quality, it was actually no different from the poison in the general sense. However, this was already the limit that Wang Lu could do. After all, he was only in the king pill stage. Moreover, the refined sewage would not poison people to death, and the toxicity was weakened by more than 90%. However, because this process was completely equivalent to eating Wang Lu's leftovers, or even more accurately, it was eating the residue of Wang Lu's digestion. At worst, it was tantamount to eating X, and at best, it was like eating saliva. Therefore, this poisonous amber-colored slurry was also called saliva oil. Considering its pungent smell, it was simply like the essence of the sewer, so it was also called gutter oil. The disciples of Spirit Sword sect spent a long year under the nourishment of the gutter oil. The pain was not known to outsiders. However, this year's torture was not in vain. The cultivation of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect advanced by leaps and bounds. A few of the foundation establishment stage all reached Shudan stage, and the Shudan stage also advanced by at least one stage. The peak Shudan led by Zhang Shang and Yang Fei successfully advanced to the king pill stage, which set a good example. Of course, the quality of the king pill couldn't be too demanding. Take Yang Fei as an example. He cultivated the burning sky and boiling sea. The true fire burned his heart, but it did not cover his clear mind. This was the proof of his aptitude. If he followed the prescribed order, the king pill would be pure and untainted. The true fire within the pill would not be extinguished. It was the highest grade king pill. However, now, the king pill in his jade mansion was barely in a round shape, but the color was dim and the flame was dim. It was not enough to be ranked as a middle-rank pill, which was simply ruining his own future. According to Yang Fei, this kind of king pill was a disgrace. When he returned to the mountain, the first thing he would do was to break his dan and recultivate. From then on, he would not allow anyone to mention it. In fact, Yang Fei's condition was not bad. Before he joined the management trainee program, he was already at the peak Shudan stage. His foundation was solid, and he was just waiting for a breakthrough. For those who had not yet built a solid foundation, the side effects of using the waste oil were even more obvious. The group of cultivators headed by Kai Xia, in 1 year, had reached the critical point of peak Shudan stage by relying on the excessive absorption of external energy. However, they were still unable to take that final step. This had nothing to do with their aptitude and perception, but purely because the quality of accumulation was too poor. If it were someone with poor aptitude and ability, this kind of extensive growth in stage was very likely to lead to cultivation deviation. For Kai Xia and the others to be able to safely and steadily advance to the peak Shudan stage was, in a sense, more rare than achieving the king pill. Moreover, there were still 2 years to break through, so their future was bright. However, it was obvious that Kai Xia and the others could not be happy. The bleak reality was on one hand, and an unexpected situation constituted the other. Wang Wu's progress was too fast, so fast that many other cultivators of Spirit Sword sect felt the real pressure. A year ago, she was a low-level Shudan, but in fact, she was just barely hanging on the edge of Shudan stage. Her real strength might not even be better than those several peak foundation establishment junior brothers and sisters. However, in the past year, she silently cultivated, and her cultivation base advanced by leaps and bounds. Today, she had reached Shudan stage, officially entering the peak Shudan stage. It was true that her Shudan was uneven, erratic like a candle in the wind, and the tempering of her primordial spirit and body was completely unable to keep up, as if her Shudan might collapse at any time, and her cultivation base would turn into running water. However, every day, her cultivation base steadily increased, and the speed and stability of her progress were astonishing. In Spirit Sword Sect, Wang Wu was never known for her exceptional aptitude. In terms of aptitude, she was the worst in the Golden Generation. In the immortal cultivation world, a 5th-rank spirit root might be in the middle, but in the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, it was really difficult for her to find her own position. Moreover, Wang Wu's perception of spellcasting was not outstanding. The application of spellcasting had always been in accordance with the rules. In addition to diligence and self-control, there was almost no bright spot in Wang Wu. Were it not for the current sect leader of Lingjian School who seemed to have a unique insight and looked at her differently, coupled with the strong support of the current generation's big brother Ouyang Shang, Wang Wu would not be qualified to be included in the Golden Generation. However, after this year, no one doubted her potential. The strange thing was why? Regarding the sudden rise of Wang Wu, Kai Xia couldn't hold back her curiosity. She had asked Wang Wu a long time ago, and Wang Wu told her the truth, because I can calm my heart, that's all. It was easy to say. In a dangerous situation, the black tide was always penetrating inside, and her 1 year of cultivation had never been stable. Even if Ouyang Shang suppressed the Dragon Palace, he could not stop the sneaky Demon King's sneak attack. In addition, the spiritual energy here was scarce. For cultivators in the growth stage, they had to experience the torture of spiritual energy hunger every day. At the same time, they also had to drink the gutter oil-like poisonous liquid. In such an environment, it was really a skill to be able to calm their heart. At least, among the 75 people in the hall, only a few people could do it. No, it could even be said that only Wang Wu could do it. Even Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu, because of external affairs, their cultivation rhythm would be repeatedly interrupted. Especially when the Demon King launched a sneak attack and successfully hurt the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect, it would produce emotional fluctuations, which would affect their cultivation efficiency. However, Wang Wu could, from the beginning to the end, no matter what happened in the outside world, she strictly adhered to her own cultivation rhythm, and her work and rest time were not messed up. Persistent in cultivation, but not impatient. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her, her countenance would not change. With such a characteristic, in a special environment, she would naturally stand out. After Kai Xia got the answer, although she was unwilling, she could only admire the vision of her uncle's sect leader and big brother, and then concede defeat. However, in fact, in the eyes of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang, this matter was not that simple. Wang Wu herself did not feel it, but in fact, based on her calm state of mind, how could she reach peak Shudan from low-level Shudan in 1 year? If it was that simple, all the Shudan stage cultivators in the world would have gone into closed-door training. No matter how calm Wang Wu could maintain her calm state of mind, could she be more stable than those who had gone into closed-door training? The key was that her ability to adapt to local conditions was too strong. Previously, no one could see that she had this ability. She perfectly used every existing condition. In this 1 year, every time she drank the essence of the black tide extracted by Wang Lu, she would use a special technique to maximize the use of the energy. And her efficiency, compared with other senior brothers and senior sisters, was at least several times higher. In general, when a cultivator absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy into their body, most of it would be squandered and wasted. Only a small part of it would be stored in the body. How to improve the conversion rate has always been a key topic in the cultivation world. Nowadays, among the cultivation methods of the major sects, this part was the core secret. Countless people would only dare to try to change it after careful consideration. But Wang Wu boldly modified the content of the cultivation method by herself, and her modification perfectly adapted to the current environment. In particular, her ability to digest the gutter oil was miraculously greatly enhanced. This was the reason why she could advance by leaps and bounds in 1 year. But how did she manage to do it? To modify the core cultivation method, it required a heaven-defying deduction ability and a strong accumulation. Even Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang did not dare to say that they had the ability to modify their core cultivation method at wills. And Wang Wu, at least before this, was never known for her perception. How did she do it? If it was the Wang Wu 150 years later, perhaps it would be easy to understand. The heaven-defying non-phase method that Wang Lu cultivated was the original cultivation method tailor-made by Wang Wu. In just 1 or 2 years, she was able to create the first dozens of layers of the cultivation method from scratch. Her perception was absolutely heaven-defying. But the current Wang Wu absolutely could not do it. Unable to hold back his curiosity, Wang Lu simply asked her directly, and the answer he got made him not know whether to laugh or cry. I'm not completely original. I just used your non-phase method as a reference. Wang Wu asked in surprise. Don't you see it? Why would you think that my cultivation method is original? You used my non-phase method as a reference? I don't remember telling you about this cultivation method. I didn't tell you about it, but when you cultivate, you never hide from people. I have seen it a lot, so naturally, I can understand some of the subtleties. There are a lot of things that are worth learning from. I used this as a reference to modify the cultivation method, and the result is really useful. Hearing this, Wang Lu was dumbfounded. And then, oh, I forgot to say thank you, I'm sorry. Wang Wu said, lightly nodded her head to show her gratitude, and then closed her eyes to continue her cultivation. Her speed was still as fast as before. Wang Lu completely did not know what to say. This cause and effect relationship was really impossible to cut off. The reason why Wang Lu did not immediately give the essence of non-phase method to the inventor of non-phase method, Wang Wu, was because he did not want to artificially create this kind of contradictory cause and effect line. Otherwise, the master would become the disciple, and the disciple would become the master. Wouldn't the ethical relationship be messed up? Unexpectedly, no matter how careful he was, he still could not escape the fate of messing up the ethical relationship. However, if this could really be used as an opportunity to wake up the #1 king pill in 9 regions in advance, it would not be a bad thing. He did not expect her to grow to the height of the future in just 1 or 2 years, but in the current situation, no one would complain about having too many strong teammates. If Kai Xia, Yang Fei, and the others were just suffering for their cultivation this year, then Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang, as the guardians of the entire Dragon Palace, faced 10 times or even 100 times more pressure. Moreover, as time went by, the future became more and more pessimistic. Chapter 528. Senior Brother Wang Lu, this is the statistical table of everyone's cultivation progress for last month. Please review it. A petite girl with a delicate baby voice appeared in front of Wang Lu, holding a piece of neatly written paper in her hand and handed it to Wang Lu. Wang Lu took the form. The progress of more than 70 people was listed in great detail. The ones responsible for the statistics were the elites headed by Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and Feng Yin. They were conscientious and meticulous. This form had been made 12 times in a year, during which there was no mistake. Well, recently it seems that everyone has found the knack, and the progress is getting faster and faster. While looking at the form, Wang Lu simulated a complex curve in his mind, which was the intuitive result obtained by combining thousands of data on the form with a complex algorithm. The results showed that the progress of his junior brothers and sisters last month had significantly accelerated. Yes, everyone is taking senior sister Wang Wu as an example and constantly working hard. Oh, no wonder the gutter oil supply is almost out of stock recently. Wang Lu chuckled, but in his heart, he was thinking that it would be fun to let the future disciples of Lingjian School take Wang Wu as an example. The peak of Lingjian School was the non-phase peak, and the divine method of the school was the non-phase method. As for the head, of course, it was Wang Wu. At that time, those disciplinary elders who had taught Wang Wu a lesson as if she was teaching her grandson would have to obediently bow their heads to her. Every time Wang Wu went out to drink, gamble, and flirt with other women, they would be angry and become her lackey. Ha ha ha, if they didn't witness this scene with their own eyes, they would simply live in vain. For this reason, they had to strive to protect this historical line. While smiling, Wang Lu saw that the little junior sister in front of him seemed to be a little unhappy, as if she was hiding something in her heart. Wang Lu was inwardly moved. When he looked down at the form, he suddenly realized that in this progress curve, this junior sister He Yu was the most prominent one. No wonder the person who sent the form this time was also changed. She was here to claim credit. Wang Lu nodded and stretched out his hand to touch He Yu's head. The little girl smiled and narrowed her eyes, beginning to enjoy it in advance. The next moment, dozens of frenzied primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi burst out from Wang Lu's palm. He Yu's petite body was torn apart by the crisscrossing sword chi, and then she was crushed into powder, leaving no bones behind. When Wang Lu made his move, Ouyang Shang was right beside him. Seeing such a bloody and tragic scene, he only raised one of his eyebrows. Yo, your attainments in sword energy have improved. Wang Lu couldn't be bothered with him and just sneered. A moment later, the blood mist in front of him quickly turned black and a cold aura spread out. His disguise was broken, and his true form was revealed. Just now, although He Yu's disguise was no different from the real person, in essence, it was just a cloud of black fog that was controlled with high precision. This set of tricks had been seen by the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect no less than 10 times in the past year. The one who manipulated the black fog was, of course, the Demon King whose true form was unknown. He could perfectly disguise himself as anyone in the Dragon Palace, every frown and every smile. And with such a disguise, there were too many things he could do. It was impossible for the disciples of Spirit Sword sect to stay in the main hall of the Dragon Palace for 3 years, so they needed some private space for their daily work and rest. And if the black fog took this opportunity to launch a sneak attack, except for a few people, no one could be sure that they could survive. And in case the real person was killed without anyone noticing and replaced by the black fog, the threat would be even greater. Fortunately, there was Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang in the Dragon Palace. Every time the black fog infiltrated, its disguise would be immediately broken. This time, the other party comprehensively optimized the camouflage effect, and then boldly attacked Wang Lu. And Wang Lu almost didn't notice the problem until his palm almost touched He Yu's hair. Then his heart suddenly jumped, and he directly made a killing move, not giving the other party a chance to explain. This decisiveness allowed him to maintain his record of complete victory. After the black fog was dispersed, it immediately began to drift backward. It was just that, before it could drift far, it was blocked by a golden barrier. Last time, the defense was not strict enough to let you go, and this time, will I repeat the same mistake? Wang Lu said, and then with a turn of his mind, his non-phase sword defense rapidly shrank, squeezing the pervasive black fog until it couldn't move. Under the pressure of the sword defense, the black fog continued to twist into form, trying to struggle, but in the end, it was in vain. Therefore, before it was about to be absorbed by Wang Lu as nourishment, it disintegrated and disappeared without a trace. TSK, still can't stop it. The nearby Ouyang Shang glanced at him. I already told you, if you encounter this kind of situation again, just strangle it to death. There's no need to waste your energy further. That's the incarnation of the other party. If it's so easy to catch the other party's origin, with the combined strength of more than 70 people, it's easy to kill a remnant soul. And if the other party is so easy to kill, wouldn't I have died in vain? Wang Lu, of course, knew this truth. However, as the supplier of gutter oil, his strength was actually too much to squander. So, it was not a bad thing to waste a bit of his strength to try to capture the Demon King's incarnation. Your pessimistic thinking is the most shameful. As the big brother, do you want to set an example for your subordinates? I think it's necessary for us to have a rectification movement in the Dragon Palace. The great leap forward of the 73 King Pill in 3 years, it's better to have a rectification movement as well. Ouyang Shang unceremoniously threw over a dozen blank yellow talisman papers that he had been writing with great speed. Rectification? I think you're so bored that your balls hurt. In that case, help me draw the talismans. The Dragon Palace's great array has been worn out for a year, and now even the demons and monsters are almost unable to resist. It's getting easier for people to infiltrate. At first, the black fog could only infiltrate once a month or more, but now it comes every few days. It's really troublesome. According to my calculations, we need to stick at least 253 Vajra demons subduing talismans today to maintain the Great Array's effectiveness. I'll be responsible for 100 of them, and the rest will be left to you. Wang Lu scoffed at this. Drawing talismans to mend the array? This is purely a trick. The main body of the ghostly fog may not be outside. Even if you stick 3 layers of talismans on the outer shell of the Dragon Palace, it may not be useful. And don't forget that when the Great Array was intact, and you were in the center with all your strength, it could still turn your King Pill into a vibrating egg. What's the use of drawing a few little yellow pictures? Ouyang Shang nodded. Well, you found a good excuse for your laziness. Unfortunately, before you come up with a better idea, I still have to trouble you to help me finish drawing the talismans. I'm not good enough, I can't draw talismans. I remember you boasted that you're the top student of Spirit Sword Sect in 100 years. I'm sorry, I have high scores but low ability. I don't know how to do it. It's okay. With your peerless aptitude, it's not too late for you to learn now, but you need to practice more. I think it's better for you to draw 200 of them. H*T. In the end, Wang Lu was bored to death. He picked up the brush and drew the Vajra demon subduing talisman stroke by stroke. Talisman drawing was indeed not his forte, but it was relative. As one of the 2 middle-level Taoist masters of King Pill in the Dragon Palace, no matter how unskilled Wang Lu was, the effect of drawing talismans was first class. More importantly, no matter how boring this matter was, he was duty-bound to do it. After all, he was one of the only 2 leaders in the Dragon Palace. However, halfway through the drawing, Wang Lu's heart suddenly moved. Ouyang, the 2 of us are weak. Why don't we mobilize the masses? Mobilize the masses? In addition to you and me, Lu Sandao is the best at drawing talismans. Unfortunately, even for him, drawing 3 talismans in one breath is already his limit. Just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. He really deserves his name. In the Dragon Palace, a place lacking in spiritual energy, energy was the most precious resource. In addition to those who had achieved King Pill and could generate their own magical power, the rest of the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect were all cautious and meticulous. If they consumed too much energy, they could not rely on gutter oil alone to make up for it. Wang Lu said, "We don't expect them to draw talismans, but to connect them with this great array. As a part of the great array, each of them is responsible for the key node. In this way, we will be able to detect any movement against them at the first moment and provide assistance through the spell formation. And with this protection net, we don't need to waste time and energy on checking and patching for this increasingly worn-out great array. Yang Fei and the others are responsible for repairing their own parts, which saves time and effort." Connect so many people in this array? Wang Lu said, "We're all grasshoppers on the same rope. Before their cultivation is completed, if this array is broken, who else can survive except for you and me? But to integrate people into the array, it's not that difficult. In this year, everyone has been drinking gutter oil together, so we've long been connected like a family. Yes, gutter oil does help to unify 'em. Moreover, recently, many people began to learn from Wang Wu to transform their own method. Although the effect is not as magical as Wang Wu's, these changes, after all, have something in common. Plus, everyone's cultivation method is Spirit Sword Sect, so now is the time when everyone resonates the deepest, so it's the easiest to establish an array connection." Upon hearing this, Ouyang Shang put down his writing brush, pondered for a moment, and then said, "This is feasible. I have connected Yang Fei and Zhang Shang to the great array, and the repulsive force is smaller than expected. If it goes well, then there's a real hope for the 3 years time limit. The only problem is, what new trick does that guy have? Humph, no matter how ever-changing his means are, his body, after all, has not been able to recover to its original state. Therefore I can roughly guess his trick. As long as we focus on ideological construction in the next 2 years, we can most likely get through this difficult time. And at that time, the more than 70 King Pill cultivators would truly reverse the historical line. His time travel journey would also usher in the final scene. As long as 2 years." Chapter 529. Senior Brother Zhang Shang. Is it your turn to be on duty today? Thanks for your hard work. With Senior Brother Zhang Shang, everyone can have some peace these 2 days. Zhang Shang frowned slightly. The demon race is treacherous and changeable. Even if Big Brother is on duty, he has repeatedly told everyone not to relax their vigilance, you guys. I know, Senior Brother Zhang Shang is so long-winded. The petite Hiyu made a face at Zhang Shang as she ran away happily, leaving the futon in the room for Zhang Shang to sit on. Zhang Shang didn't say much after entering the room. He sat cross-legged on the futon and closed his eyes to rest. A moment later, a half-real flying sword jumped out from between his eyebrows, and the sword light shone brightly. There was also a little person standing on this flying sword. His facial features were exactly the same as Zhang Sheng himself, but the size was compressed to about 7 inches. It was Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit. Releasing the primordial spirit to control the flying sword was not the ability of Taoist Master King Pil, but the emotion sword cultivator was different. Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit stepped on the blade of the sword with bare feet, and the soles of his feet were almost integrated with the blade. This was the complete integration of the primordial spirit and the flying sword. If not, the sword of Taoist Master King Pil was so sharp that even the sword intent could cut iron like mud. With Zhang Sheng's ability, he could not independently attach his primordial spirit to the flying sword. After the flying sword left his body, it flew up and flashed away on the roof. For Zhang Sheng, the next work had just begun. After leaving the room, the flying sword appeared in a muddy black water, which was the blessed fountain outside the dragon palace that had been soaked by the black tide. Today's blessed fountain had been polluted by the black tide for 2 years. The once clear spring water had become highly poisonous. 2 years ago, only a bowl of such poisonous water could make the body of a golden generation change from head to toe. As for soaking the primordial spirit flying sword in the poisonous water, it was a road to death. But now was different. In 2 years, the golden generation had been reborn, and a large number of Taoist Master King Pil had emerged. Although the quality of King Pil was worrying, it was still King Pil after all the golden generation. Moreover, for 2 years, they had been drinking the waste oil processed by the black tide water day and night, so they had more or less resistance to this force. So they started to fight back. Being suppressed by the black tide of the Devil Clan in the Dragon Palace was not a long-term solution after all. There was still 1 year left, and everyone had to prepare to break out. At that time, the 75 King Pil cultivators in the Dragon Palace would form a 72 earthly malice formation. Ouyang Shang, Wang Lu, and one of the most outstanding disciples would form a 3 talents formation to command the overall situation. When the time comes, the 2 formations would be launched simultaneously to detonate the earth veins under the water. They would then borrow the force from the water to soar up to the sky, sweeping away all the evils. It would be a matter of life or death, so there was no room for carelessness. Therefore, before this, there was more than a year of training period, during which the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect began to take the initiative to attack. Relying on the crumbling Dragon Palace Great Array, they went deep into the black water to expand their territory. Of course, only a few people were qualified to expand their territory. The task of most of the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect was to support the Dragon Palace Great Array. Over the past year, the Great Array left by the Flood Dragon of Blessed Fountain had become more and more riddled with holes. Not only the Devil King, even the evil spirits and monsters had begun to infiltrate the Dragon Palace. The so-called evil spirits and monsters referred to the spirits of the dead in the black tide. In the past year or so, the spirits of the dead began to appear in the completely silent black tide, just like the skeletons and zombies that Wang Lu first saw at the foot of the Western Mountain. This meant that the black tide released by the Devil King had begun to fully evolve, which also meant that the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect must be extra careful to spend the remaining less than a year. The grand strategy of the 72 Earthly Malice Formation and 3 Talents Formation was not a small one. If anything went wrong in the middle, the whole plan would go down the drain. Therefore, for more than 2 years, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu had been cautious and tried their best to ensure the safety of everyone. Otherwise, they would not have wasted their precious time and energy on the details. There were more than 70 people in the Dragon Palace, so what if 2 or 3 of them died? In the real history line, the Black Tide crisis was a big crisis that caused the annihilation of the entire Lingjian school. It was impossible to expect one person to safely cross the tribulation without dying. But from the looks of it now, it was indeed true that no one should die. If one died, the strategy of launching 2 arrays at the same time would be impossible to talk about, especially since more than 2 years had passed. Everyone had been working hard towards this goal, so it was very difficult to change the plan at the last minute. They could only go all the way until... Clank! A crisp sound of impact interrupted Zhang Shang's thoughts. When he carefully sensed it, it turned out to be a heavily armored undead warrior, holding a heavy hammer. Just now, after colliding with his flying sword, the undead warrior was shaken back in the water. But it was just shaken back, not destroyed? Zhang Shang could not help but be surprised. Since he entered the black water with his primordial spirit under the leadership of his big brother, he had fought against the undead of the black tide many times. He was always victorious and had never met an opponent that he could not take down in one move. Did the undead of the Black Tide evolve again? Or did Big Brother and the others deliberately let him adapt to the intensity? The Black Tide had appeared for 2 years, so its real power was naturally not something that a mere Zhongshan could run amok. It was just that the repulsive force of the Dragon Palace was too strong. Plus the existence of Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang made the most powerful undead reluctant to fight head-on. Most of the undead wandering around the Dragon Palace were minnows, which could be used as practice for Zhongshan. But now it seemed that there was an elite among the minnows. Zhongshan adjusted his rhythm and temporarily stopped thinking about the meaning of this. Instead, he focused on the fight. He was a sword cultivator, one of the top 3 sword cultivators among the disciples of Spirit Sword Mountain in terms of strength and potential. Fighting was his vocation. As for the complicated things, it was better to go back and report it to his senior brother and let him think about it. Zhongshang's strength was indeed very strong. Even if it was just his primordial spirit controlling the virtual sword, its power was far superior to that of the minnows in the Black Tide. The strength and defense of the heavily armored undead was extremely strong, but its reaction speed was far less. After 2 or 3 moves, Zhongshang found a flaw, and a move of a silver lining to the sky went straight through its forehead. After dealing with this elite undead, Zhongxing also felt a bit tired. His primordial spirit could not go out of his body for a long time. First, his rapid progress in the past 2 years was completely based on the foundation of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm. His magical power level had gone up, but his primordial spirit cultivation base had not kept up. Second, primordial spirit was not a realm that Taoist Master King Pill could reach. Thanks to his emotion sword technique that was close to the immortal level, plus some special reasons, he could achieve the current magical effect. At this time, Zhongshan had been fighting in the Black Tide for about the time it took to eat a meal, and the power of his primordial spirit had been consumed by more than 70%. It was time to sound the gongs to retreat. However, just as he was about to retreat, the flying sword suddenly flashed and trembled slightly. Zhongshan was immediately vigilant. Sensing with his primordial spirit, he found that not far away, there were several heavily armored undead that began to approach. As a sword cultivator, Zhongshan was naturally belligerent, but at this time, he did not want to fight. Even if his primordial spirit was full, he would still be cautious when he saw this strange situation. If there was something abnormal, then there must be a demon. With his current strength, he was not qualified to slay these demons. However, when he wanted to retreat, his retreat had been cut off. 2 shadowless and invisible undead condensed behind him, forming a pincer attack with a heavily armored undead that was approaching in front of him. Zhongsheng's heart sank even more. This ambush array was obviously premeditated for a long time, and the Demon King was obviously operating behind it. The crux of the matter was not these elite undead, but the fact that up until now, his big brother and the others had not appeared. Most likely, the undead of the Black Tide had used some special method to deceive their perception. Then they set up a trap to deal with him. It was not easy to deceive the perception of those 2 people, so they were very particular about the target. Zhongshan was the key figure of the double array, and his importance was even higher than that of the other disciples. Because Yang Fei, Kai Xia, and the others were only important characters in the 72 Earth Terminator Great Array, while Zhongshan was the only remaining important candidate of the 3 individual sword array. To put it cruelly, if Yang Fei and the others died, with the means of his big brother, they might be able to find a replacement. At least, Zhongshan knew that the ancient sword of Mount Kuen in Wang Lu's hand was extraordinary. The sword spirit could already exist independently, and its strength was not bad. At the critical moment, it could be used as a King Pill disciple. However, there were only 3 candidates at most who could step on the human position of the 3 individual sword array: Zhongshang, Zhou Ming, and Fei Ying. In addition, the old powerhouses of the Golden Generation, such as Yang Fei and Feng Yin, were not qualified. Even Wang Wu, who had suddenly emerged in the past 2 years, was still lacking. For these 3 people, Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu had put in enough effort. Any loss could be said to be a serious injury, not to mention that Zhongshan was the first among the 3 candidates. Rise. At the critical moment, Zhongshan did not hesitate to go all out. His flying sword pierced straight behind him like lightning. The 2 undead blocking the way behind him had already expected this and turned their figures into nothingness 1 step ahead of time. However, they were only half real and half illusory, like thousands of thin silk threads, which then weaved into countless powerful nets. Although Zhang Sheng's flying sword was fast, it slowed down after piercing through dozens of nets. Break! Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit shook. His flying sword suddenly swelled up and shone brightly, finally breaking free from the shackles of the net. However, an arrow at the end of its flight could not pierce through Lu Peng. Zhang Sheng stimulated his primordial spirit. Although he barely pierced through Lu Peng, he was still weak. Soon after breaking free from the net, he stopped. Fortunately, at this time, he was only one step away from the Dragon Palace. However, at this time, a dark shadow appeared in front of him. In the already dark black tide, it still made people feel dark. The power of that shadow could be seen. Zhang Sheng knew that he couldn't fight it, and he didn't want to fight it. Fortunately, at the last moment, he still had a life-saving trick. Break! With a loud bang, Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit was actually separated from the flying sword. The original flying sword cracked with a loud bang, turning into countless fragments. Among them, the largest fragments just happened to be facing the front, buying time for Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit to escape. This was the last card that Ouyang Shang taught him. Although the life source flying sword was precious, it was not as precious as a human life. Moreover, in the end, the sword of Mount Kuen in the hand of Wang Lu could be temporarily borrowed. With the magic of the sword spirit, there should not be much resistance as the life source flying sword for a period of time. And Zhang Sheng's last move really worked. How great was the power of the disintegration of the life source flying sword. Each fragment was almost the full power of a Taoist master of Jindan stage. Although the shadow responsible for the encirclement was powerful, it was also forced to be flustered and completely had no time to take care of Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit that took the opportunity to escape. However, just as Zhang Sheng was about to return to the Dragon Palace, the shadow suddenly spoke. Zhang Sheng, it's me. The voice passed through the water and was keenly captured by Zhang Sheng's last remaining primordial spirit when he returned to the Dragon Palace. In an instant, Zhang Sheng felt like he was struck by lightning, and his primordial spirit shook violently. Chapter 530. I heard that Zhang Sheng is not in a good state recently. In the bedroom, Wang Lu casually asked while looking at the form submitted by Kai Xia. Kai Xia snorted. His life-flying sword is destroyed, of course, his state is not right. If the old doesn't go, the new won't come. His life-flying sword was soaked in gutter oil when he was advancing to the King Pill. After this disaster, he will have to change it sooner or later. Moreover, didn't I give him a high-grade magical weapon? With his aptitude, he should be able to use it as usual after refining it for a month. Not to mention that he originally cultivated the emotion sword, using emotion as a sword. His life-flying sword is not that important. Humph, you always have something to say. Obviously, you two didn't take good care of him. Wang Lu smiled. Your conscience has been soaked in gutter oil, right? When Zhang Shang was in trouble, the Demon King was invading. Big senior brother and I were too busy saving you, so how could we care about Zhang Shang? Not to mention that big senior brother had already taught him a life-saving trick. Oh, that's right, the method to explode the flying sword was taught by big senior brother. Even if you want to complain, you can't blame me. Kai Xia curled her lips. Knowing that she couldn't argue with the other party, she was too lazy to say anything more. I've given you the form. I still have to cultivate, so I can't chat with you anymore. After sending Kai Xia away, Wang Lu turned his head and was surprised to see Ouyang Shang standing behind him, holding another form in his hand. As the controller of the Dragon Palace, Ouyang Shang was naturally no exception when he integrated other cultivators into the array. As the most important part of the array, the Dragon Palace was now like his hands and feet that could be freely used, so it was not surprising that it could appear and disappear unpredictably. What was surprising was the form in his hand. Zhang Sheng's matter is really not over yet? Yes. Ouyang Shang said that day, after he blew up his flying sword and escaped. His behavior was very strange. At that time, the Demon King's infiltration caused a disturbance. Yu, who was the closest to Zhang Shang, rushed to protect him. According to her, when Zhang Shang's primordial spirit returned, his expression was very strange. I'm afraid it's not as simple as the explosion of his flying sword. Wang Lu said, it's indeed not simple. The Demon King personally covered for him and set up an ambush. You've just diagnosed Zhang Shang. What's the result? Everything is normal, except that he's a little weak. Weak? Are you physically weak or mentally weak? At this time, Wang Lu also saw the form in Ouyang Shang's hand. That form was the result of his comprehensive examination of Zhang Shang. There were several interesting data. Both. Ouyang Shang said, "There's no need to talk about his weak body, as for his guilty conscience. It's not accurate to say that he's guilty. His primordial spirit is highly active, especially his awe-inspiring sword intent. It doesn't seem like his natal flying sword was destroyed. He cultivates the emotion sword, using emotion as his sword. As long as the emotion is there, the sword will be there. Look at him, he is in heat." Ouyang Shang said with a wry smile. "What junior sister you told me was more or less the same. Just now, I blew up my flying sword in exchange for my primordial spirit to return to my body. As a result, my first breath was particularly heavy, as if I was very emotional. Later, I used my immortal heart cultivation to control it. You thought that he had just experienced a fierce battle and hadn't adjusted himself, but in fact, actually she's in heat," Wang Lu concluded without hesitation. "The problem is, when I went to ask Zhang Shang, he refused to tell me anything." Wang Lu sneered. "Will you tell your companions when you have a wet dream?" "So, didn't I come to find you? This kind of low-level topic, it's still you who can open up the situation, I can't." "Humph, you finally recognize the huge gap between you and me." After an hour, Wang Lu returned to the room and shrugged. "Just as I guessed." Ouyang Shang was stunned. "It's really her? The ghost won't go away." As early as before Wang Lu left to find Zhang Shang to have a heart-to-heart talk, Ouyang Shang and he had guessed who could make Zhang Shang's mind unstable. The final conclusion was that the poison-extracting physician who should have died in the desert was the most likely. For those who cultivated the emotion sword, the word emotion had always been sudden and vigorous, and it was hard to forget for a long time. Of course, it was not easy to be like that senior who had ascended and only loved one person in his life, and in recent years there were also many who had wanton love. Being devoted to love was love, but was being fickle in love not love? A devoted person could break 10,000 methods with one sword, and a fickle person could also refine 1,000,000 swords to kill everything. But Zhang Shang was at least not a fickle person. For more than 2 years he did not say it, but everyone knew that he had not forgotten what happened in the desert in his heart. At that time, they left in a hurry and did not see the final fate of the desert demons, but with a weak and degenerated body suddenly erupting with the power of ancestral atavism, it was cutting off their own path of retreat. Plus, there was still the world-destroying demonic wolf underground. No matter how they thought about it, it was a dead end for them. For this reason, Wang Chenai came back and got drunk. However, Zhang Shang, who had a more intense temperament, did not say a word. It was just that since then he, who was originally outgoing and cheerful, became old-fashioned. The mental journey was extremely complicated, but there was no need to mention it. In short, at least on the surface, Zhang Shang had never said anything. The matter of cultivation was also cautious and conscientious, so everyone tacitly avoided talking about it. Cultivators must cultivate their mind. After a period of time, Zhang Shang would naturally adjust, but unfortunately, time waits for no man. Ouyang Shang muttered, "If that's the case, the other party has really grasped a weak link." Zhang Shang's strength and talent are impeccable, and his temperament is actually more resolute and decisive than ordinary people. However, the sword of emotion is double-edged. It can hurt others and also hurt oneself. The elders of the sect intended to let him go through the tribulation of King Pill. With his temperament, he should not have gone through the tribulation of emotion so early. This is purely a mistake in the training policy. You have made him too pure and ignorant, so infatuated with a native girl once. Since you have already considered the existence of the tribulation of emotion, either let him cultivate in the mountains all the way to the King Pill, or simply find a beautiful girl in the sect to arrange a marriage for him, Ouyang Shang said. Who would have thought that there would be a native civilization in the savage land? Even if there is no native civilization, there can still be fox spirits, cat-eared girls. Moreover, when you are really lonely, even a goat or a wild dog is a source of risk. Hey, you think too much of junior brother Zhang Shang. To be honest, do you want him to fall in love with a pure, innocent, charming and lovely sheep, Or do you want him to fall in love with a demon woman who is the natural enemy of mankind? Good question. Ouyang Shang was stunned, and then really fell into contemplation. To tell you the truth, I think a beautiful sheep is also a good choice. At least we can teach her to cultivate, and when she transforms into a human, then... Big brother, you really have a good appetite. Ouyang Shang quickly explained. This is just an academic discussion. Back to the topic. How are you going to solve the problem of Zhang Shang? The best way is to let him fall in love with someone else, which can maintain the sharpness of the emotion sword and also prevent him from being tempted by the demon race. Ouyang Shang said, but this is probably very difficult. In the past 2 years, we have also thought of ways to match him in the golden generation. From He Yu, Fei Ying, Kai Xia. They have all been partners with him, but their immortal hearts are not moved. Speaking of this, Ouyang Shang had no lack of complaints. Zhang Shang, this little bastard, was rarely moved, but the moment he moved on to the demon race. This ability was really rare. I think there is a problem with the previous way of partnering. Wang Lu said, letting them take turns in pairs is to cultivate the feelings of colleagues. If true feelings can be cultivated in this way, he should have had a lover long ago after being on the mountain for so many years. Then what do you think? Ouyang Shang asked slightly mischievously. You just want to hear this sentence from my mouth, right? The simplest way is, of course, to find someone who is willing to sacrifice herself. Zhang Shang, this kid, obviously talks about love from the body. He can even do it with a native girl. If it is a girl of the same race, it is estimated that he will play until his kidney explodes. Moreover, he tasted the taste of flesh 2 years ago, and in the following 2 years, it is difficult to do it alone. It is time to find a partner for him. Ouyang Shang said, actually, I think there are many junior sisters who like him. Geniuses will shine wherever they go. Moreover, in these 2 years, his infatuated face is the best to entice young girls. Those junior sisters have been cultivating in the mountains all year round, so they do not have much experience. It is natural for them to be attracted to him. Who do you think is more suitable to pair with him? Well, we can arrange the junior sisters according to the size of their breasts in descending order, and then pair them in turn. Or according to the size of their hips. I am not too clear about his preferences, but as the big brother, you should be more familiar with him, so you should have a good understanding of his sexual preferences. You are the one who knows that. While Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang were painstakingly discussing which girl to choose to pair with Zhang Shang himself was also at a loss. Just now, Wang Lu came to ask him about his experience after his primordial spirit left his body, and when he saw Wang Lu, he knew that his secret could not be kept. In fact, he did not intend to keep it a secret, because he was still clear about the priorities of the matter. It was true that the beautiful figure of the poison-extracting physician had always been lingering in his heart, but compared to a momentary love, decades of feelings for fellow disciples were undoubtedly much heavier. He had cultivated the emotion sword for so many years, and had long learned to use all kinds of emotions. Otherwise, before he met the poison-extracting physician, would the emotion sword not have shown its might? But he did not want to explain these words, because anything said with the mouth would always have an effect. Nothing could prove everything better than practice. Moreover, rather than letting Big Brother and the others worry about these trivial matters, it was better to solve the problem himself. The two of them were already busy enough, so he should not make them worry more. Wasn't the management trainee program to cultivate the ability to solve problems independently? Of course, this problem was not easy to solve. Love had always been the fiercest of many emotions. A person could have a number of family and friends, but there was usually only one true love. If he could not forget it, it would always be a hidden danger. It could be assumed that the demon race was also aware of this point. Unfortunately, they were too stupid. Did they really think that with this trick, they could make him change sides? What a joke! The experience 2 years ago, now that he thought about it, was like a dream, but since it was a dream, there would always be a day when he woke up. Zhang Shang gently stroked the brand new flying sword in his hand, and his heart had already made up its mind. Chapter 531. The long-discussed selection of the 3 individual sword array by the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect was finally settled. In the end, the one who stood in the human position of the 3 individual sword array was still Zhang Shang. Although Zhou Ming and Fei Ying had some regrets when they were not selected, they were not reconciled. Because they asked themselves honestly, they could not reach the level of Zhang Sheng. In the past 6 months, Zhang Sheng's performance was impeccable. It was even awe-inspiring. Zhang Sheng, actually, you don't have to do this. Zhou Ming and Fei Ying are both good candidates. You're not the only one. When handing over the diagram of the 3 individual sword array to Zhang Sheng, Ouyang Shang's face finally revealed a look of reluctance. Zhang Sheng just smiled and said, "They are indeed very powerful, but after all, they are just replacements. Our opponent is the Demon King, so everything must be done to the best. Only by doing it to the limit can we have a chance of winning." But Emotion Sword uses emotion to control the sword. If you suppress yourself like this, I'm very worried about you. Big brother, you worry too much. Zhang Sheng took the diagram and said, "Love is emotion, and the brotherhood between us is also emotion." Perhaps half a year ago, I would still be a little confused, but when I made that sword strike, my sword intent became unprecedentedly pure, no longer confused. In the past 6 months I think I have proved this. Ouyang Shang silently nodded. Zhang Sheng's cultivation in the past 6 months was indeed enough to prove everything. He was not only diligent, but also desperate. According to the normal rotation, he would go out of his body once every 3 days to kill the dead and refine his primordial spirit. However, since the unexpected encounter 6 months ago, Zhang Sheng volunteered to change the frequency to once a day, which was completely suicidal. Even Ouyang Shang expressed his opposition to this. However, Zhang Sheng was also very stubborn. At least, he completely refused to cooperate with the blind date program that Ouyang Shang prepared for him. "I am wholeheartedly devoted to the sword, so I have no intention of clinging to love." It was difficult to win people's trust with empty words. Therefore, Zhang Sheng proved everything with practice. Every time he went out to fight, he would gain something. After experiencing an ambush, his perception ability was a lot sharper. Without the help of his senior brother, he could come and go freely in the black tide. At the same time, by fighting, his cultivation base progressed at an astonishing speed. Of course, this frequent fight was not the key. Under the watchful eyes of his senior and junior brothers, he soon ushered in a crucial moment in the black tide outside the Dragon Palace. Surrounded by numerous undead, he saw his lover from 2.5 years ago, the desert tribe's poison-extracting physician, Lu. This time, Lu was no longer hidden in the shadows, but openly appeared in front of him. Her appearance and posture were exactly the same as 2 years ago, and even her temperament was as clear and pure as before. The appearance of Lu even made Wang Chenai, who also had a one-night stand with the poison-extracting physician, fall into deep thought. Zhang Shang was a sentimental person, so the shock he received was even greater. His gaze changed in an instant. However, it had become as cold as ice. Just as the demon girl was about to speak with melancholy, Zhang Shang's emotion sword was unsheathed. At that time, everyone in the Dragon Palace who was watching the scene with a spell was shocked by the decisiveness and sharpness of that sword. That was definitely the sharpest sword in Zhang Sheng's life. Wherever the sword chi passed, even the water was smashed. The demon girl, who bore the brunt of it, was smashed into a mass of black fog and disappeared in the water bubble with more than 10 heavy armored warriors beside her. From the beginning to the end, Zhang Sheng didn't even say a word. That cold and ruthless attitude made people wonder whether he was still a sword cultivator of the emotion sword or not. "No, it's not ruthless." After Zhang Sheng's primordial spirit returned, he lightly explained, "It's just heartless." Zhang Sheng proved himself with unquestionable actual combat. Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang also had nothing to say. After some discussion, it was finally decided to give him the last position of the 3 individual sword formation, which was the greatest recognition for him. In fact, the strength of Zhang Shang, who had used the emotionless sword, was completely above the other senior and junior brothers. After that, the demon girl never appeared in front of Zhang Shang again. Perhaps she had really been killed by Zhang Shang's emotionless sword. Or perhaps the Demon King didn't have any hope for this trick to shake people's hearts. In short, this matter finally came to an end. However, whenever people saw Zhang Shang's increasingly firm eyes, they always felt a little sad. The failure of the femme fatale plan seemed insignificant to the Demon King, because if one plan failed, there was still another plan. The poison-extracting physician was only one part of the plan. After that, he used all kinds of tricks, constantly infiltrating and attacking in various ways, trying to obstruct the dual array strategy, making Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu tired of dealing with it. Even his own cultivation was often dragged down. According to the best expectation, after 3 years of strategy, in addition to harvesting 73 fresh and hot Daoist King Pill cultivators, the cultivation base of Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu would also advance by leaps and bounds, and they were expected to reach the peak of King Pill. However, in fact, because of the foreign affairs involved too much energy, the two of them were currently only middle-level King Pill, and it was almost impossible for them to go any further in the remaining 6 months. However, there was also a good side to things. The Demon King's tricks just proved that he lacked the means to make the final decision. With the strength of the Demon King himself, dealing with a group of juniors whose highest level was only King Pill, he still needed to spend so much effort. This could only show that he had been seriously injured by Fenrir, and was no longer able to do what he wanted. As long as they persisted. When the dual array was launched, it would be the time for the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect to escape and soar to the sky. Under the encouragement of this belief, the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect spent the most difficult last half-year. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, the Dragon Palace of Blessed Fountain trembled endlessly. The dark gravel and dust rustled down from above, and the cracks were like the lightning in the sky, constantly cracking on the dome. At the same time, the spiritual veins under the Dragon Palace began to collapse, and the wild surrounding spiritual energy tore the ground and continued to gush out from the cracks. The so-called heaven falling and earth splitting was nothing more than this. The disintegration of the Dragon Palace of Blessed Fountain was very fast, but all of this had long been expected. The cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect had been preparing for this day for 3 years. In mid-air of the main hall of the Dragon Palace, Wang Lu, Ouyang Shang, and Zhang Shang stood in a tripartite confrontation. Wang Lu had the supreme spirit root, void spirit root, so he occupied the heaven position. Ouyang Shang had great luck and was blessed by the earth, so he occupied the heaven position. Zhang Shang cultivated the emotion sword, and the essence of man was nothing more than emotion, so he occupied the human position. The 3 of them occupied their respective positions, using the profound sword intent to command the overall situation. On the ground, the 72 disciples of Spirit Sword Sect were scattered, each occupying a vital position according to the design of the 72 Great Termination Array. And in the middle of the array was Fei Ying, the beautiful girl who was the best at array in the golden generation besides Ouyang Shang. Start the array! Along with the girl's clear shout, the cultivators concentrated their attention and opened their mouth in unison. Start the array! In an instant, the rippling ground that was impacted by the tremendous force of the collapsing earth veins suddenly calmed down, as if it was suppressed by an even greater force and couldn't move at all. At this time, the 72 King Pills bloomed neatly, reflecting each other's brilliance. In the past 3 years, due to the situation, most of the King Pill of the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect had various defects such as insufficient color, which was very different from the high-rank King Pill. However, at this moment, under the effect of the Great Termination Array, the luster of each other blended, making up for the defects, and the color of the King Pill gradually became flawless. The Great Termination Array itself was not so magical. However, at this time, by taking advantage of the collapse of the spiritual veins of the Blessed Fountain, the spiritual energy turned into evil energy, and the essence of the entire spiritual vein was absorbed into the Great Array, which could catalyze the 72 perfect King Pill in a short period of time. Start the array! In mid-air, Wang Lu uttered a long cry. The sword of Mount Kuan was held high above his head. This ancient sword that was born from the thick earth showed an ethereal and boundless aura. Start the array! Ouyang Shang lowered his head and roared. His natal spiritual sword pointed straight down. The sword intent was pure and thick, motionless like a mountain. Start the array! A bizarre and dazzling thought flashed through Zhang Shang's mind. The bits and pieces of his decades of cultivation were fused into a pure sword intent, which was reflected in his sword-like eyes. The 3 individual sword array was officially activated. The 3 cultivators seemed to have merged into one in an instant, as if there were thousands of incarnations. Each of them was the leader, and each of them was also the foundation. Next, the sword array was connected to the Great Termination Array. Although the number of people in the 3 individual sword array was smaller, it was like the brain commanding the torso, instantly taking control of the situation. The 72 Great Termination Array absorbed the power of the spiritual veins and evolved into 72 pure King Pills, using the endless growth characteristic of the King Pill to provide a huge amount of energy. The three individual sword array above their heads allowed the three top sword cultivators with immortal level and quasi-immortal level cultivation methods to work together to use this power to the limit. Start the array. This time, it was impossible to identify who the owner of the voice belonged to. It seemed to be a single person, but it also seemed to be a chorus of 75 people. The two arrays that were completely launched released endless power. Under this cry, the blessed fountain dragon palace only persisted for a moment before collapsing. The next moment, the black tide above their heads came crashing down. In the tide, there were countless spirits of the dead, which together transformed into a giant beast that seemed to devour everything. However, the blazing sword light immediately lit up the darkness. The three individual sword array switched to the main position. With Heavenly Sword Wang Lu as the core, it mobilized the huge power provided by the 72 Great Termination Array, and blasted out an unprecedentedly strong primal chaos heaven-splitting sword. This sword was both an invisible sword chi and a tangible sword. The cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect only felt a surge of irresistible force, as if they were melting and recombining. In the blink of an eye, the 75 people had jointly transformed into an invincible sharp sword. The tip of the sword pointed straight to the sky, and the sword intent broke through all obstacles. Boom! The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword fiercely collided with the black tide, and the momentum was appalling. The double array strategy was not a secret. The Demon King had long expected that there would be such a decisive battle. Therefore, in advance, he arranged thousands of troops in the polluted water of Blessed Fountain, which included many people with amazing strength. Coupled with the highly toxic sewage that had been brewing for 3 years, the obstacles faced by the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect were no small matter. However, this pool of highly toxic sewage that had besieged the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect for 3 years, under the impact of the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, only resisted for a blink of an eye before vanishing. The spirits of the dead hidden in the water could not even resist the fierce shock wave of the impact and were turned into debris. The heavy water pressure of Blessed Fountain seemed to have disappeared under the impact of the sword chi that split everything. Just a moment ago, they were still in the underwater dragon palace, and the sound of the array was still lingering in their ears. The next moment, the depth of more than several miles was penetrated, and the group of people had appeared in the sky above Blessed Fountain. The road ahead was suddenly clear. Chapter 532. The sky was as dark as ink. The days of not seeing the sun for 3 years did not end with the heaven-shaking sword strike of the double array. The world above the water was still dark. After 3 years, the black tide had been deeply rooted in the savage land and had grown stronger. After leaving Blessed Fountain, what the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect saw were more and more powerful undead. Tens of thousands of skeletons spread all the way to the horizon along the vast land. In particular, the direction of Spirit Sword Mountain was completely covered by thick darkness. The road back to Spirit Sword Mountain seemed to be impassable. My goodness, we just came out of the dragon pool and then entered the tiger's den. In the 3 individual sword array, Ouyang Shang's sigh sounded in the heart of Wang Lu and Zhang Sheng at the same time. The primordial spirits of the 3 people had long been closely connected under the effect of the array, and their minds were interlinked with each other. What a joke! If there really is such an earth-shattering scene, the black tide should have already alarmed Shengjing sect, and Hichu Daoren would have sent people to collect it. Do you think the 9 regions map is fake? This was just an illusory technique that only had the looks of it. Everyone, follow closely, we're going home. The 72 cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect under the 3 individual sword array were silent. When the array was activated, they converged their primordial spirits and gave everything to the 3 individual sword array above their heads, ignoring the outside world. Wherever the 3 individual sword array pointed, they would follow. Wang Lu occupied the sky position in the 3 individual sword array, and had the absolute dominance at the critical moment. As soon as he broke through the encirclement, he immediately locked the direction. His sword pointed to the east, in the direction of Spirit Sword Mountain. In this regard, Ouyang Shang hesitated but did not oppose it. He just instantly remembered the other junior brothers and sisters who entered the savage land with him. 3 years ago, before the black tide blocked the Blessed Fountain, there were more than 20 people scattered around the savage land. Now, he wondered if they were still alive. However, now was not the time to save them. The explosive power of the double array was unparalleled, but it could not be sustained. The sword array would only last for an hour at most before it disintegrated. And after the double array disintegrated, everyone would be exhausted and unable to fight again. The original design of this move was to succeed or die trying. They didn't have any extra time to waste. Break, break, break. Wang Lu commanded the sword array to advance triumphantly. He urged his primordial spirit to constantly issue the edict. Each time the edict was issued, a ripple-shaped primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi would burst out, smashing everything that blocked the way. After 3 consecutive waves, the sword array had already rushed dozens of miles from the surface of Blessed Fountain. Wherever it passed, there was no enemy. Tens of thousands of undead were turned into ashes by the sword waves. Even the black tide was scattered a lot. The dark clouds in the sky gradually became sparse, revealing the gray sunlight. However, after 3 waves of sword ripples, the resistance in front of them grew stronger and stronger. The undead that had died earlier were just cannon fodder, but more and more elites were gathering in front of them, trying to stop the sword formation at all costs. Break, break, break. Wang Lu did not stop at all. He issued 3 consecutive orders. The momentum became more and more amazing, and the sword waves were more destructive. The huge mountain of carrion cracked under the sword waves, the sinister ghosts disappeared, and thousands of skeletons were crushed into bone powder. It was another unparalleled crushing assault. The sword array was unstoppable. It moved forward for dozens of miles again, which was equivalent to taking a big step on the journey home. At the same time, the enemies in front were gradually becoming stronger. The wild monsters that had been corrupted by the black tide, the ancient devil spirits that had appeared in the dream of the devil spirit, break, break, break. Wang Lu roared loudly. His primordial spirit madly urged the power of the sword array. The 72 king pills of the terminating earth great array shrank crazily along with Wang Lu's breathing, as if they were cracking. Every time it shrank, the king pill genuine chi would be squeezed out and poured into the 3-talent sword array. It would then be transformed into the heaven-breaking sword chi that was comparable to heaven's retribution. The ancient devil spirits were torn apart in anger and pain. The monsters were dying in ignorance. A few ghost kings that had just appeared screamed and melted away. Although the magical power supply of the 72 great killing array was still abundant, Wang Lu's primordial spirit, after the 9 rounds of eruption, had become indeterminate, flickering and flickering. Switch. Ouyang Shang took a step forward in the sword array and led the entire sword array to rotate. He took the lead and replaced Wang Lu. As Ouyang Shang ascended the stage, the sword formation's movements immediately slowed down. At the same time, it also lost the power to float in the air and fell downwards. Not long after, everyone in the sword formation landed on the ground and landed in a mountain range. At the same time, in the mountains, the power of the black tide was everywhere. Countless demons and ghosts began to poke their heads out. Move. Ouyang Shang snorted coldly. The huge power was no longer highly concentrated and transformed into the sharp sword will. Instead, it suddenly sank and poured into the earth. In the next moment, the sword formation suddenly moved forward, charging forward at an astonishing speed. Their legs didn't seem to move at all, but they moved as if they were flying, unstoppable. Because the soil under everyone's feet was churning madly, pushing them forward according to Ouyang Shang's command. In front of them were mountains, so Ouyang Shang shouted, "Separate!" The earth shook and the mountains separated. The mountain peaks that had stood for thousands of years cracked by themselves under the command of the edict, separating into a narrow and long canyon, which was just right for the sword array to pass through. On both sides of the canyon, ghosts and demons of all sizes were eyeing them. In front of them, there were even ghost fireheads that fell from the sky to block the way. These ghosts in the black tide would not listen to the edict of Ouyang Shang, so he once again ordered the mountains. Collapse. The earth collapsed and the mountains cracked. Bottomless cracks bloomed, like the mouth of a giant beast that swallowed all the ghosts on the ground. The broken rocks tumbled down, and the weight of thousands of kilograms smashed the bones of the dead. Ouyang Shang ordered the earth to be used by him, clearing the way ahead. The valleys on both sides isolated most of the enemies that blocked the way, and the momentum of the advance was unstoppable. After rushing for hundreds of miles, Ouyang Shang only felt a burst of heat in his primordial spirit, which had reached its limit. Replace. Zhang Shang stepped forward to replace Ouyang Shang. As he occupied the main position, the power of the sword array suddenly decreased by a level. Although in the sword array, the power was shared and the primordial spirit was integrated. However, the gap between him and Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang was inevitable. Sensing that the sword formation's aura was weakening, the undead that had been scared out of their wits began to stir again. Chaos! Zhang Sheng's first move was his unique skill, Emotion Sword. The sword chi of Emotion Sword was invisible and quietly penetrated. A moment later, there was the sound of fierce fighting everywhere. The ghosts in the Black Tide were infected by the sword chi and began to kill each other crazily. As for the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect who were surrounded in the middle, no one cared about them. Zhang Shang gently smiled and commanded the sword array to move forward. Although the speed was not fast, it was as easy as walking on the ground. After traveling for dozens of miles, Zhang Sheng gradually felt that his primordial spirit was shaken, and his heart was restless. His 7 emotions and 6 desires began to dance chaotically, and it was difficult for the emotion sword to continue. Replace. At this time, Wang Lu had already rested and had been waiting for a long time. However, when he ascended to the main position, ready to fly forward and sweep away all the ghosts and demons with his primal chaos heaven-splitting sword, this homecoming battle finally ushered in a powerful opponent. Good array, worthy of being the famous Golden Generation. A familiar voice, a familiar figure. The person in front of him had a red face and fierce fangs, and was covered in heavy armor. Although his figure was small and thin, he was majestic like a mountain. Every step he took ignited a flame that could burn everything under his feet, and when he lifted his foot, he left behind a piece of scorched earth. The long-lost last Demon King finally appeared. Good courage, you actually dare to stand up. You're just an invisible remnant soul, you don't even have a physical body. Are you here to die? Wang Lu narrowed his eyes and analyzed the real situation of the opponent in his peak state. However, when Wang Lu's sharp eyes swept across, he found nothing. The opponent's rank was, after all, too high. The complete Demon King was a powerhouse on the same level as the World Destroyer Demon Wolf. His realm might even be above the level of Supreme. Even a wisp of remnant soul was not something that could be analyzed by a mere king pill. However, a remnant soul was just a remnant soul. If he had 1% of his ability in his complete state, he wouldn't need to mobilize hundreds of millions of the dead from the Black Tide to prevent them from returning to the mountain. Relying on so many miscellaneous soldiers to fight precisely showed that his main body's strength was seriously insufficient. At least, it was not enough to directly compete with the sword array of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect. Foreign guest, go back to your hometown. As soon as his voice fell, Wang Lu's primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi went all out. There was nothing that the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi could not break, and it also had absolute lethality to the invisible soul. As soon as the sword chi came out, the remnant soul of the Demon King appeared to be drifting in the wind and rain. However, before the Demon King was split by the sword chi, a thick shield suddenly appeared in front of him. The sword chi that was enough to pierce through the sky bombarded the shield, setting off a series of trembling ripples. However, the ripples spread out, and the shield remained as firm as before. The shield was held on a thick and powerful arm, and that arm belonged to a tall and burly heavily armored demon. Under the helmet with sharp horns on both sides, there was a familiar face. Desert Demon? He's actually not dead? More than 3 years ago, Wang Lu saw that face in the desert. It was a hard-working blacksmith, with infinite strength but simple and honest. Later, at the cost of his life, the power of his ancestor was aroused by the Demon King, and he became the complete form of the royal family of the demon world, and his power skyrocketed. However, not to mention that this kind of atavism would greatly overdraft his vitality. Even after atavism, the blacksmith, whose power was at its peak, had absolutely no ability to resist the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. Let alone King Pil Yuanying. Even a Taoist master of deity stage, if they were not middle level or above, would not be able to withstand the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. And that blacksmith was at most King Pil level. Could it be that in the past 3 years, he had the ability to soar from King Pil to deity stage? But very quickly, Wang Lu's doubts were answered. Behind the blacksmith, dozens of royal family members appeared. They were all desert demons who should have died long ago, and their strength far exceeded that of 3 years ago. At the same time, their auras were connected, vaguely connected by an unknown formation. Just now, it was not the blacksmith who blocked the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, but the combined forces of these dozens of demons. Although, even if dozens of people joined forces, they should not be able to match the power of the sword Qi. You are not the only one who understands formations. The Demon King said with an irritating smile. Indeed, I, an outsider, only have a remnant soul left. I can't even withstand a casual sword strike from you. So if you have the ability, go past my loyal guards and kill me, as long as you can really do it. Chapter 533. This was an unexpected and fierce battle. The strength of the desert demons was extremely strong. Each of them was comparable to the authentic king pill of 9 regions. Their individual strength was better than the king pill soaked in gutter oil of the disciples of Spirit Sword sect. And their array was even stronger. The actions of dozens of people seemed to be disorderly and often inexplicable, but by raising their hands and feet, they could draw great power. In a head-on collision with the combined sword array of Lingzhen school led by Wang Lu, they did not fall into a disadvantageous position at all. Every time the two sides collided, it would cause the earth to shake. The aftermath of the sword Qi continued to sweep and wreak havoc, which actually dispersed the black tide that shrouded this place, revealing the clear sky. However, the blue sky was soon lost under the violent turbulence of energy. Sometimes a deep night sky appeared, sometimes lightning flashed, thunder rolled, clouds and mist shrouded the sky, and sometimes the sun shone high. It could be seen how fierce this fierce battle was. Wang Lu stood on the main position of the 3 individual sword array. The more he fought, the more alarmed he became. 3 years ago, when he formulated this double array strategy, he never thought that there would be someone who could compete with the sword array head-on. Of course, strictly speaking, if the Demon King could solve the threat of Fenrir within 3 years and completely recover from his injury, then the complete form of the Demon King was enough to crush everything. In that case, everyone could only go to hell together. However, at present, although the Demon King had not recovered from his injury, his bodyguards were unusually powerful. Are they really just King Pill level? After the fierce battle, Ouyang Shang could not help but ask. Wang Lu replied in a sinking voice, according to the classification of human beings, they are indeed King Pill level, ranging from peak King Pill to low level. On average, they are not much higher than us, and they are still inferior in number. But however, after fighting for a long time, the side of Spirit Sword sect could not gain the slightest advantage, let alone crossing their line of defense to kill the Demon King. Instead, they were forced to slowly retreat by the other side. And this was still led by Wang Lu, who had the sharpest offensive in the 3 individual sword array. When Wang Lu's primordial spirit flickered and needed to be replaced, the situation would only get worse. It's the difference in formations. Fei Ying's voice suddenly came from the link of their nascent souls. She was in the center of the 72 earthly fiend formation, the only node that was closely connected to the 3 great sword formation. Therefore, she could communicate with Wang Lu and the rest. Fei Ying was an expert in formations, and when it came to talent and perception, she was even above the all-round Ouyang Shang. At this time, after a period of observation, she determined that the quality of the formation used by the demons was above their own combined sword formation. The difference in formation, huh? Ouyang Shang suddenly felt that the matter was even more troublesome. This combined sword formation was originally conceived by him and Wang Lu without eating or sleeping, and then it was finally formed after everyone's repair, condensing the wisdom of the golden generation. Although its performance was still inferior to many famous formations of the nascent soul and deity transformation stage, it was already the pinnacle of the King Pill realm. The stronger the formation, the better. For example, the legendary immortal slaying sword formation, which could kill immortals in the primordial times, was naturally far superior to the 3 great sword formation in terms of mystery and power. However, that sword formation could not be used by those who were not at the true monarch level, and was far from being as close to the people as the 3 great sword formation. At this stage of the King Pill, the combined sword formation could be said to be the peak. Unexpectedly, there was always a higher mountain. The formation used by the demons was obviously a level higher. After the battle, it only made people feel tired, and the situation was getting worse. There is a difference in individual combat strength and formation design. This battle is not going to be easy. In the nascent soul link, Fei Ying sighed helplessly. Don't think about it. Leave the battle to us. There will always be a way. Ouyang Shang comforted Fei Ying and then said to Wang Lu, if you can't hold on, let's change people. I see that your nascent soul is almost at its limit. Wang Lu, however, disagreed. Would it make the situation worse if you came up? Right now, with me in the lead, we are barely in a balance. Once we weaken, the situation will immediately snowball, and there will be no turning back. The problem is, won't the situation get worse after you run out of energy? So before I run out of energy, I have to think of some tricks. Wang Lu gritted his teeth. Prepare a suicide team. A suicide team? Ouyang Shang's eyes narrowed. Are you serious? What else? Compete in endurance and wait for them to run out of energy first? I think their situation is much better than ours, so they can't compete in endurance. If we don't use a big move, it's impossible to turn the situation around. Your so-called big move is to let one of your junior brothers and sisters go up and explode the king pill? Or do you have other big moves? Tell me. I can't agree. Even if we can face the sacrifice calmly, this move of yours is too risky. The number of people in our combined sword formation is just right. Not one more. Once we explode the king pill, it's equivalent to destroying the sword formation. If we can't shatter the opponent's formation, it's equivalent to suicide. Wang Lu said. There's a gold substitute, Autumn Beam, who can support us. It's fine before the formation, but now that the formation is operating at full capacity, how can Autumn Beam intervene? Once a new person is inserted, it will cause the formation to stagnate. It's also suicide. In that case, it seems that eldest senior brother has thought of a certain method that doesn't require you to take any risks, yet is stable enough to win? Ouyang Shang was silent for a moment. Let me go up and try. If it doesn't work, you can find someone to explode. Okay, then I'll wait for your good news. After Ouyang Shang went up, the situation did not improve. Of course, it was not as bad as Wang Lu had expected. Although the explosive power was not as heaven-defying as the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword Qi, Ouyang Shang skillfully used the power of the earth to deal with the demons. Of course, a large part of this came from the inexplicable blessing of the earth. 80% of his strength was very effective. Ouyang Shang relied on his extraordinary performance to barely maintain the situation. Unfortunately, even when his primordial spirit was boiling and he could not fight anymore, he could not find an opportunity to turn the tables. After Ouyang Shang retreated, it was Zhang Shang's turn. But facing this emotion sword cultivator, it was really hard for anyone to have much confidence. Zhang Shang's performance was indeed very outstanding, but he could not compare with Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu. Therefore, at the same time he went up, Wang Lu was already prepared to choose a suitable king pill from the 72 Earth Fiend formation to explode. But at this time, the demon formation also began to decline from prosperity. Not only did the output of the demons in the formation begin to gradually decrease, they also appeared a little stiff when changing the formation, and their flexibility was not as good as before. And in a stalemate, this change was particularly eye-catching. Because what was needed to break the stalemate was precisely this little change. Wang Lu looked at the change in the situation in front of him in confusion. Could it be that the demon's endurance is really not good? The validity of the formation has already passed? Ouyang Shang was also puzzled. Or does the emotion sword have a special effect on these desert demons? Or, the two of them could not figure out the mystery for a while, but they were not particularly obsessed with this problem. Now, what they had to do was to fully support Zhang Shang as the leader and exert the power of his emotion sword to the extreme. And Zhang Shang would not be distracted to think about other things. Instead, he was completely immersed in the emotion sword. The tangible sword in his hand was waved with all his strength, guiding the king pill true Qi into invisible sword Qi, which burst out after being entangled by the emotions brewed in his immortal heart. Chaos. The sword of confusion and confusion. When the sword was released, the edge of the sword was erratic, like the broken moon in the water. The demon shield guard in front of the formation only felt a blur in front of his eyes, and the arc-shaped sword Qi had bypassed his heavy shield and struck his shoulder. The heavy armor offset the sharpness of the sword Qi, but the confused emotions still penetrated in. The emotions entangled his heart, causing the demon to suddenly be stunned on the spot. In a split second, the demon's heart was filled with confusion. Countless forgotten scenes flashed before his eyes. The arduous but simple life in the tribe, the daily blacksmithing practice, the secret feelings he had with his childhood sweetheart. Until the awakening of his ancestors' bloodline, the old life was torn apart. Why do I have to fight? Even if I win against the person in front of me, can everything I hope come back? The bewilderment of the shield guards caused the entire demon array to become sluggish. Zhang Sheng immediately stepped forward, taking advantage of the victory to pursue and attack. However, the demon array also changed very quickly. Hundreds and thousands of shadow spears stabbed out like a storm, forcing Zhang Sheng to place his sword horizontally and use his bluntness to prop up his sword defense to block the spears. When Zhang Sheng found a flaw in the demon's offensive, the opponent's formation had changed to another person. It was a butcher with the same tall and burly figure and burning flames in his eyes. With him as the core, the demon formation became blazing hot, and Zhang Sheng's confused emotions were burned out in an instant. Zhang Sheng took a deep breath and operated his immortal heart. The confused thoughts in his heart were swept away, replaced by blazing fighting intent, as if a flame was ignited. Burn! After the red sword chi shot out, it turned into a sea of fire, adding another fire to the blazing demon formation, adding oil to the fire. Roar! The bloodthirsty butcher's only rationality was burned away, and his tyrannical killing intent was unstoppable. He left the formation and launched a surprise attack. The blood-stained axe and machete pointed straight at Zhang Sheng, his killing intent like a sea. Zhang Sheng retreated behind the scenes at this time. Wang Lu, who was already prepared, walked to the front of the stage, and the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi that was full of power erupted. Half of the butcher's body melted like snow and was completely annihilated under the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. Without the protection of the formation, the demon's single combat power was vulnerable in front of the combined sword formation, and Wang Lu's attack succeeded, so he took a step back and gave up the main position. Zhang Sheng took a breath and immediately replaced him. When he attacked, the sword intent was cold and bone-piercing. Sorrow. When the butcher was executed and the demons were shocked in mourning, Zhang Sheng's sorrowful sword fell just at the right time. The sorrowful sword intent was like a heavy snow falling from the sky, sweeping through the hearts of every demon and freezing all emotions. The whole formation stagnated, and the rock-solid combinations suddenly became scattered. This time, there was no need to change people, because Zhang Sheng had already brewed the sharpest sword intent to perfection. That was the sword with the most destructive and lethal power among the emotion swords. Under full force, its power could even compete with the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi. And if it fell into the demon race's war, it only needed one strike to decide the outcome. However, at this time, Zhang Sheng suddenly felt his primordial spirit tremble, and the sword intent that was brewed to perfection was slightly scattered. It was not his own problem, but the supply of magical power from the 72 Earth Fiend Great Array began to waver. The combined sword formation produced a chain reaction, and his emotion sword was also greatly affected. What? Time. Wang Lu replied in a muffled voice. Time. Zhang Sheng suddenly realized that the time was about to come. The combined sword formation could only last for an hour. Previously, the three-talent sword formation had taken turns to display its might, continuously advancing hundreds of miles, crossing more than half of the way home, and then fighting with the resurrected Devil Clan. The time had finally come to an end. Chapter 534. In the design of the double array strategy, they did not consider how to change their moves when they encountered a well-matched opponent. Relying on the combination sword array, the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect could obtain the combat power comparable to a Taoist Master of Deity stage within an hour, which was a shocking increase in combat power by 2 levels. In order to achieve this goal, the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect had paid a painful price in the past 3 years. Everything was to obtain the crushing strength advantage of a Taoist Master of Deity stage. Deity stage might not be the top fighting power in the entire 9 regions, but it was more than enough to face the remnant soul of the Demon King. Of course, if the opponent was so powerful that even a deity stage cultivator found it difficult to win, then it was also fate, and nothing could be said. Unexpectedly, although the real Demon King did not have the power of deity stage, he had a group of subordinates whose strength was comparable to that of deity stage. Almost the same idea as the combination sword array, the Demon King relied on a group of desert demons whose highest cultivation base was only Peak King Pill to block the combination sword array of the Golden Generation. Now, an hour was about to pass, and the 72 Great Killing Array had been on the verge of collapse. Starting from the weakest King Pill, There were people who could not keep up with the change of the great killing array. It was not that they lost their fighting spirit, but after being frequently squeezed, the king pill was on the verge of collapse. It was difficult to meet the minimum demand of the great killing array, and they might be expelled from the array at any time. Once the 72 great killing array collapsed, even if Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang had great ability, it would be of no use. The 3 individual sword array would be like water without a source. But until this time, the golden generation still could not break through the defense of the demon race. It seems that I have won this round. The voice of the demon king came faintly, and his playful and complacent posture was particularly irritating. The combination sword array had not completely disintegrated. At present, it still had the power to make a blow, but it was on the verge of collapse. Whether this last blow could be made or not, it really depended on many people's thoughts. If there was even a little bit of relaxation, the sword array would collapse. Before the array was on the verge of disintegration, the perception shield of many disciples was lifted, and they could be disturbed by external objects. And the mental resistance of the king pill was also the weakest. A few words of the demon king had already set off waves in the hearts of many people. However, right at this moment, in the great earth fiend formation, Fei Ying exclaimed in surprise, "There's a flaw in the demon's formation." As she spoke, she used the connection between the Great Earth Fiend formation and the 3-talent sword formation to transmit her discovery to the 3-talent sword formation through the primordial spirit link. In an instant, in Zhang Sheng's field of vision, a dot in the demon's array became as red as blood, which was the unique mark of Fei Ying. The one that Fei Ying had marked out was a short and small demon. His performance in the previous battle was mediocre, but now, for some reason, he was drifting away from the entire formation, immediately revealing a small flaw. Fei Ying pointed out that point, and then her voice passed through the heart of every disciple of Spirit Sword Sect. Don't listen to his rampant words. In fact, the demon race is already an arrow at the end of its flight. They can't even maintain their own array, and began to show flaws. As long as we destroy that weak point before they can regroup, we can take the opportunity to break through the defensive line and attack the root of the problem. These words immediately stabilized the morale of the army. Understood. Zhang Shang took a deep breath and then fully operated the king pill in his jade mansion. His immortal heart was full of killing intent. Dying Heart Sword, at this stage, Zhang Sheng's strongest killing move was ready to be launched. Time was of the essence. Zhang Shang had no time to exchange places with his 2 senior brothers, and Wang Lu and Ouyang Shang also had no intention to compete for the main position. Judging from the situation just now, Zhang Sheng's emotion sword had the most obvious restraining effect on the demon race. Although the principle was unclear, now was not the time to delve into the principle. I'll accept this fruit of victory, Zhang Sheng silently said in his heart, and then his dying heart sword went all out. At the last moment, the combined sword array burst out with amazing power. The disciples of Spirit Sword Sect had already ignited their innate vitality, desperately supplying it. Under the full power eruption, the dying heart sword instantly rushed into the core of the opposite party's array, and then pierced into the chest of that short and small demon. The sword strike was so ferocious that the entire devilish battle formation was completely destroyed by the shockwaves. The short devilish being bore the brunt of the attack, and most of his heavy armor had been disintegrated by the shockwaves alone. The helmet covering his entire face had fallen off, revealing his true appearance. It was a delicate but pale face. All of a sudden, Zhang Sheng slightly trembled. "Lu, is that you?" Zhang Sheng spat out a soft questioning voice. However, the other party could no longer respond to him. After being pierced by the dying heart sword, the former poison-extracting physician lost her vitality in a flash. There was a trace of astonishment on her face, and she didn't even have time to say her last words. What a pity. Zhang Sheng sneered inwardly. If I didn't have that accidental encounter with you half a year ago, I might have suffered a big blow at this time, and then implicate everyone. As a cultivator of Emotion Sword Sect, Lu is indeed my lifeline, but unfortunately, you guys exposed this card too early. Yes, until today, I still can't let go of my love for Lu, but I also know that the real Lu has died 3 years ago. Now, this one is just a walking corpse that was awakened by the Demon King. Because if it's the real Lu, she would never stand on the opposite side of me at this moment. And I will never waste my feelings on a pile of meat. That would be disrespectful to the real Lu. With a bit of determination, the power of Zhang Shang's dying heart sword went up another level. It pierced through the corpse, swept away the demon's line of defense, and went straight to the Demon King's body. As long as this sword hit the target, the battle would be over. At the last moment, Zhang Sheng found that time seemed to slow down. Perhaps it was because when the dying heart sword was fully used, his primordial spirit operated beyond its limit, or perhaps it was the Demon King's final struggle. Although he was a remnant soul without a body, his essence was still the primordial spirit of a supreme-level powerhouse, and perhaps he could affect other people's perception. But this was just a meaningless struggle. No matter how he interfered, Zhang Sheng's dying heart sword would not waver even a little bit. What a pity. The Demon King's voice sounded faintly. She's the only survivor that I managed to preserve her soul intact. I wanted to say that if you could defeat me, I would grant you a happy ending. I didn't expect my painstaking efforts to be ruthlessly destroyed by your sword. Zhang Sheng was stunned, and then his heart began to shake uncontrollably. Don't listen to him. Wang Lu snapped. Dead men tell no tales. It's not worth wasting energy. Dead men tell no tales? Ha ha ha, you're just deceiving yourself. If she wasn't deeply in love with you, how could she disobey the order 6 months ago and secretly go to meet with you? This trump card should have been kept until the end. She loves you so much that she disdains everything. She would rather abandon her own people to hinder you in the battle array. Otherwise, how could my perfect battle array turn from prosperity to decline so early? If you are not blind, can't you see the problem with that array? Unfortunately, your strength is too weak. Even with the help of a traitor like her, you can't win, so at the last moment, she had to take the initiative to jump out and become a flaw. From the moment she resuscitation 3 years ago, she made up her mind to sacrifice herself to help you. And you, the human who once pledged eternal love with her and was willing to live and die together, finally stepped on her corpse and walked in front of me. You. Zhang Sheng's body trembled violently, and his sword chi scattered uncontrollably. That's right, you've won. My perfect battle formation has been broken, and no one can stop you anymore. So, enjoy the fruits of your victory, human. The fruits that are watered by the blood of your loved ones must be exceptionally beautiful. Boom. Zhang Sheng's state of mind was in chaos, and the perishing heart sword collapsed. Damn it, I knew that people in heat are unreliable. At the critical moment, Wang Lu stepped forward bravely and stood in the main position against the repulsive force of the 3-talent sword array. The primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi rolled out a huge vortex, sucking all of Zhang Sheng's scattered sword chi into it and turning it into his own to continue to stab this victorious sword. Who cares whose corpse he stepped on, whose blood watered the fruit? Zhang Sheng, this affectionate person, will be tricked by your tricks, but I won't. However, without the cooperation of the people in the 3-talent sword array, Wang Lu was trying to control the full burst of energy of the combined sword array with his own strength. For a moment, the overload operation made Wang Lu's king pill shake violently. Cracks appeared, his limbs and bones creaked, and his 7 orifices constantly overflowed with blood. And the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword chi, which inherited most of the power of the perishing heart sword, had become as heavy as a mountain, and for a moment, he couldn't attack. Together. Ouyang Shang exerted all his remaining strength and stepped on the human position, forcibly replacing Zhang Sheng, whose mind had already collapsed. And on his original position, there was another Ouyang Shang maintaining the array. This was the 5-element secret technique, impure earth reincarnation, which was far from being able to display with his realm. In theory, this secret technique could only be displayed by someone with deity transformation cultivation base, but Ouyang Shang gave it his all when fighting for his life. His identity as the Son of Providence played a magical effect. The ground under his feet suddenly surged with a force, supporting him to release this secret technique perfectly. The so-called Great Providence, its magical effect was at its peak. With Ouyang Shang stabilizing the 3-talent sword array, Wang Lu suddenly felt the endless support of power, and the sword chi in his hand became handy again. Oh, the Providence thing again? The Demon King sneered. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Ridiculous Providence. Break for me. Boom. As soon as the Demon King's voice fell, Ouyang Shang felt the king pill jump fiercely, and then the impure earth reincarnation shattered with a loud bang. The human position was immediately empty, and the 3-talent sword array was directly broken. The strong backlash affected Ouyang Shang and Wang Lu at the same time, and the two of them spurted out blood at the same time. And Wang Lu clearly heard the sound of his king pill shattering. Under such circumstances, The shattering of the king pill was almost certain death, but Wang Lu maintained an unusual calmness at the last moment. His every action was still under control. Although there was not much time left, it was just enough for him to complete his mission. At the last moment, Wang Lu exerted all his remaining strength and directly detonated the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi that was out of control. Let's die together. Chapter 535. The sound of water dripping could be heard in the darkness. Wang Lu woke up and opened his eyes. In the darkness, there was only a hazy figure standing in front of him. Although the figure was blurry, the outline was vaguely discernible. Wang Lu said in surprise, "Eldest senior brother, it's you?" After a pause, he asked again, "We're still alive?" The figure in front of him was silent. In the darkness, there was only the rhythmic sound of water dripping. Could it be that we're already dead? Seeing that the other party did not answer, Wang Lu vaguely understood. After a moment of silence, he lay down with his head up, disheartened. Sigh. I thought that with this hard work, I could go against the heavens and change my fates. You can indeed go against the heavens and change your fate. You have already gone against the heavens and changed your fate. Ouyang Shang's voice sounded. So Wang Lu jumped up, eh? You're not dead? Before his voice fell, Wang Lu suddenly felt a strong sense of weightlessness. His body involuntarily fell down, and in the darkness below, a spot of light rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, Wang Lu found himself lying in an unfamiliar valley, surrounded by bare rocks, without the slightest vitality. The darkness above his head was rolling, the black tide shrouded. The power of the darkness was abnormally strong, making people feel suffocated. Strange. Was the conversation with eldest senior brother just a dream talk? Then how long have I been asleep? Did the last sword strike have any effect? It stands to reason that when the primal chaos heaven-splitting sword qi erupted, even a peak nascent soul stage cultivator would die at the closest position, let alone the demon king, who only had a remnant soul left and had no ability to resist. But, however, Wang Lu's theory was only applicable to the creatures of the known world. It may not be so applicable to the extraterrestrial visitors. And judging from the intensity of the black tide above his head, during the time he was asleep, the black tide not only did not dissipate, but instead became more and more intense. What happened after he fainted? Just as Wang Lu was about to explore further, the sky above his head burst into a deafening sound. Kacha! The sky shattered, and a deep crack was torn open. Energy surged in the depths of the crack, and blazing flames and blood suddenly rained down. Countless demons and ghosts surged out from the crack, greedily thirsting for everything outside the cave. What are these things? Wang Lu looked at the scar in the sky with extreme shock. His intuition told him that it was like a gate leading to hell. Now that the gate was open, the demons were about to sweep through the 9 states. The fiendish demons in the crack were all of a species that they had never seen before. Judging from their large numbers, they were only cannon fodder to scout the way, but their strength was not to be underestimated. Then, who was hiding behind them? Moreover, the number of these cannon fodders seemed to be endless. If they continued to emerge like this, even if they were just cannon fodders, they could still bring great harm to 9 regions. In your dreams. A thunderous roar scattered the clouds. At the same time, a huge purple-blue dragon roared from the horizon. The dragon's roar was soul-stirring. Its body was far away in the sky, but the sound wave made even the primordial spirit of Taoist Master King Pil, Wang Lu, unstable. It was actually close to the level of immortal beast. The azure dragon came very fast. In the blink of an eye, it flew from the horizon to the front. Its slender body circled in the air and spewed out cold air from its mouth. Suddenly, a world of ice and snow appeared. All the demons that flew out of the void were frozen into ice sculptures without exception. Even the waterfall of flames and blood that poured down froze and stopped flowing. Oh! Not far away from the scar in the sky, a short figure appeared. It was the Demon King from the outside world. However, at this time, the Demon King was no longer a wisp of remnant soul. He had a strong body and a powerful soul, and his pressure was even higher than that of the Azure Dragon. Unexpectedly, even the 18 demon generals couldn't stop you, and you even summoned the Guardian of 9 regions. According to the standard of human cultivators, you guys do have some ability. With that, the Demon King turned around and revealed his front to Wang Lu. Wang Lu was immediately taken aback. It turned out that the right half of his body from his right shoulder to his waist had disappeared. The edge was uneven, as if it had been bitten by a giant beast. However, with his current strength, who could cause such damage to him? Moreover, he couldn't even recover from his injury? Unfortunately, it's still not enough. Whether it's enough or not, you'll know when you see it. Behind the Azure Dragon, more than 10 elders of Spirit Sword sect appeared one by one. When he saw these elders, Wang Lu suddenly realized where he was. What he saw was the real history. Why did he suddenly jump from the past to here? It was probably because his mission as a time traveler had been completed. The Demon King had indeed disappeared under the last blow, and his destiny had been changed. However, things were not over yet, because there were still too many truths waiting for him. For example, which plane did this alien come from? He was obviously not a demon, but he could steal the position of Demon King. Could it be that he relied on his own strength? How many people were hiding behind the scenes? In addition, he had basically seen all the members of the Golden Generation. Their talent and potential were indeed impeccable, especially the first-line talents such as Fei Ying, Zhang Shang, and the others, who were not far from Ouyang Shang. As the elders said, in the Golden Generation, most of the Heavenly Sword Hall members in the later generations were second-rate. However, judging from the actual performance, the second-rate evaluation was too modest. Take Feng Yin as an example. From shoot-on stage to peak deity stage in 100 years, and his real strength was even above deity stage. This achievement was the best in the entire 9 regions. In the Golden Generation, perhaps only Ouyang Shang was expected to achieve such a breakthrough in 100 years. Moreover, the performance of Wang Wu was also puzzling. 100 years ago, she was just a girl with absolute dedication to immortal cultivation. Whether it was strength or temperament, there was a huge difference between her and the later generations. However, these differences were erased in the history, which made Wang Lu feel great regret. And now, it was finally time to reveal the secrets that had been troubling him. Then, the next step was to quietly watch the real history. In the sky, the elders of the Lingjian school confronted the Demon King. In terms of comprehensive strength, the Lingjian school had the absolute upper hand. There were 3 supreme-level people in the team, and the one in the lead had a faint aura of an immortal treasure. The Demon King, who had half of his body bitten off, was far from his opponent. The Demon King had long been aware of this. If you want to kill me, any one of you can do it. You don't have to hide that immortal sword, I can see it. In order to kill that hungry wolf, I have paid a heavy price, so I am indeed not your opponent. But now, even if you kill me, it's useless. The passage has been opened, and the sky is about to collapse. No one can save it. When the elders of the Lingjian school heard this, they were startled. They looked up and saw that the crack was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom at a glance. It seemed to really lead to an unknown world. I've long heard that there are 3,000 worlds, and 9 regions is just one of them. But there should be an insurmountable barrier between the worlds. Unexpectedly, it was actually broken by people. The current sect leader of the Lingjian school looked up at the depths of the passage, and his equally deep eyes had already seen the other side of the passage. After a long time, he sighed. If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have concealed the news of the change in this place for a moment of gain and loss. Now that Lingjian school has suffered the bitter fruit of their own suffering, there's nothing I can say. Senior brother, why do you say such discouraging words? Behind him, an elder with a curly beard laughed. From another perspective, if this matter succeeds, it will be a great merit. Even if all of us die here, the position of one of the 5 uniques in the Lingjian school will not be easy to come by. Well said. The sect leader's eyes shone, and then he stepped forward to the crack and put his hand into the passage between the 2 worlds. Behind him, the elders took out their flying swords one after another and pushed their strength to the limit. The Demon King was taken aback. You guys. Seeing the plan of the elders of the Lingjian school, the face of the Demon King instantly turned gloomy. Don't even think about it. He stretched out his remaining left hand, and a dark mountain rapidly rotated in his palm. However, at this time, the Azure Dragon rushed straight over and interrupted the summoning of the Demon King's mountain with absolute brute force. Evil creature, get the hell away from me. The mountain in the Demon King's left hand was melted by the flame into blazing lava, and then pressed directly on the Azure Dragon. However, the Azure Dragon ignored the injury and struggled to entangle the Demon King. During the time when Azure Dragon delayed the Demon King at the cost of his life, the Elders of Spirit Sword Sect, with amazing decisiveness, formed a huge and complex array. It was a terrifying array with a number of Supremes as the core, the sect guarding immortal treasure as the sacrifice, and the spiritual power of the Feng Shui line of Blue River region as the bait. Repair the heavenly deficiency. The sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect unleashed his original immortal sword. A clear flying sword, which had been passed down for thousands of years and was said to be bestowed by the upper realm, melted in the light. With this as the guide, a sword light went straight to the sky. A moment later, the sky was full of bright stars, and the black tide that covered the sky disappeared like rain. The stars were like a waterfall, and millions of light spots came from infinitely far away. The earth cracked, and a deep light bloomed from the cracks on the surface, like the light from the earth's core. The Elders of Spirit Sword Sect displayed their respective methods in the light, and one after another, projected their well-tempered jade mansion. For a time, bejeweled jade mansions formed a forest, which was beautiful, but soon melted in the light. Do you think you can stop me like this? The Demon King, who was firmly entangled by the Azure Dragon, constantly released his demonic power from the crack, trying to prevent the completion of the heavenly deficiency array. However, compared with the formation of the array, his personal power was insignificant. If I can open this passage once, I can open it a second time. Your sacrifice is doomed to be meaningless. However, more and more light gathered around the crack, like an insurmountable barrier, blocking the passage. The Elders of Spirit Sword Sect were unmoved. Join us. The Demon King whispered. You don't know who the opponent you are going to face is. Everything you're doing now is just like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. But I'll give you a chance. Join us and become one of us. You will have power far above that of 9 regions. Ha ha. The answer of the Elders of Spirit Sword Sect was a burst of laughter, as if they didn't care about life and death. You? The Demon King angrily said, if you dare to destroy my cause, I will kill your disciples at all costs. Even if I will eventually die here, your Lingjian school will vanish forever. Then my Lingjian school will be immortal forever. Ha ha ha. The last scene that Wang Lu saw was a sea of light that completely submerged the crack in the sky. When the light dissipated, the sky was clear, but the Demon King's face was pale and his whole body was trembling. Chapter 536. From Wang Lu's point of view, there were some problems with the previous generation of Spirit Sword Sect elders. Clues could be seen from the management trainee program. It was rare for a poor and weak sect to be able to gather so many talented disciples at a certain point in time. If it were any other sect, they wouldn't even have enough time to take good care of them. But they had the guts to throw all their disciples into the savage land to experience the test of life and death. It was like pulling seedlings to help them grow, beautifying them into jade that wasn't cut and polished. To put it nicely, this was ambition and full of courage. To put it bluntly, this was simply disregarding human life. Of course, considering that Wang Lu himself had also used the heaven-burning blood technique to develop the wisdom sect, he would not comment on the fact that Wang Lu treated human life like grass. However, there was no doubt that in the eyes of this generation of Spirit Sword Sect elders, the lives of the disciples were not the first priority. In contrast, revitalizing the sect was the real core task. Revitalizing the sect was, of course, a good thing. From the perspective of the manager, as long as the pros and cons were weighed, it was understandable to pay a certain price in exchange for the success of the sect. As for the failure of the management trainee program, the elders could not be blamed for the strategic mistake. Who could have expected that the savage land, which had been peaceful for thousands of years, would suddenly have a great demon king from an unknown world? However, at this moment, witnessing the elders of Spirit Sword Sect who were like moths flying into the flame to patch the heaven deficiency, as well as the last moment of the great Spirit Sword Sect's heroic words of immortality, Wang Lu's view on them was completely clear. This group of guys was not just a problem. They were basically sick. Perhaps it was because they grew up in the era when the survival pressure of the Lingjian school was the heaviest, and the situation was the most difficult, so their dedication to revitalizing the sect had reached the point of resentment. They did things regardless of the cost, regardless of the consequences, and completely lacked foresight. First of all, they concealed the change in the savage land. The elders obviously did not want the Wanxian League to know that the management trainee program of the Lingjian school had released a fierce beast from the demon world, and they intended to deal with it by themselves. By the time they discovered that the opponent's strength was far beyond their imagination, and that the crisis brought about wasn't something that the Blue River region alone could withstand, it was already too late. As for sacrificing the lives of all the elders to make up for the lack of heaven, it seemed solemn and stirring, but in fact, it was without a plan. Before the crisis was over, if they all died, who would shelter Ouyang Shang and the other disciples? Did he expect them to fend for themselves? The last sentence about being immortal was even more inhuman. The sect existed because of the people. If the people were all dead, what was the use of leaving an empty reputation? But no matter what, he was already dead, and there was no point in whipping his corpse. The living only needed to think about how to survive. For example, Ouyang Shang and the others had to consider how to survive under the wrath of the Demon King. It was not that there was no chance. The news that the Lingjian school's elder team had been completely annihilated would soon be known by others. After all, it was one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. It was impossible to hide the fact that the higher-ups of the Lingjian school had disappeared. Furthermore, the disciples who stayed behind to guard the school did not receive any orders to conceal the news. Once the outside world learned of the news, there would naturally be foreign aid. This process would not be too long, at most a few months or a year. However, for the Golden Generation, who had to survive in a desperate situation, one more day was a great torture. The crack in the sky had disappeared, the demons and monsters no longer appeared, and even the black tide had been dispersed. However, the demons in the Savage Land were still wreaking havoc. Although the power of the Demon King, who was severely injured by Azure Dragon, was greatly reduced, he still had an overwhelming advantage against a group of disciples. Moreover, the Demon King had an unusual obsession with the Golden Generation. For a demon who volunteered to open the passage to another world to invade 9 regions, since he could not achieve his biggest goal, then what he could do was to kill the talents of 9 regions as much as possible to weaken the strength of 9 regions. Under such a situation, the Golden Generation suffered heavy casualties. It was so heavy that Wang Lu could not even look straight at it. In the time travel timeline, because of Wang Lu's activity in the desert, the Demon King's plan to open the crack in the sky with the black tide was directly cut off, so that the story directly entered the second stage. Later, Wang Lu worked hard for 3 years and finally perished together with the Demon King. Although he sacrificed himself, he kept most of the others. Everything seemed to be very smooth. The tragedy of 100 years ago was just a heavy story, and there was no intuitive understanding. But now there was. In the time travel timeline, Ouyang Shang and the others failed to stop the resuscitation of the Demon King in the desert. They did not even fully realize the hidden crisis in the desert and let 10 years slip away. Thus, the Demon King completely recovered. After a fierce battle, the demonic wolf Fenrir was killed. In despair, only a trivial fire was left, and the Demon King was left with an injury that could not be recovered for the rest of his life. Then the Demon King absorbed the huge magic power of Fenrir, and with the black tide, tore the sky and opened the passage. During this period, Ouyang Shang and the others tried to stop it, but it was useless. They wanted to send a message back to the sect, but the way back was blocked. Fortunately, there were elders of Spirit Sword sect who were good at divination. After noticing the abnormality, they led the crowd to come, so that everything was not irredeemable. However, the Golden Generation was already irredeemable. In the valley of the northern mountain, 2 girls in the uniform of Lingjian school were cautiously moving forward in the valley. Their clothes were ragged and their appearance was in a mess, but their eyes were firm like well-tempered steel. It was He Yu and Qing Shuang. He Yu walked in front and was observing a towering ancient tree with rapt attention. She stretched out her hand to stroke the rough trunk, and after a long while, she frowned and said softly to the person beside her, "The marks left here 3 days ago have completely disappeared. The demon race has been here. We have to move our position." Behind He Yu, a slender girl with slightly immature eyebrows said in surprise, "We have to move again? No, it's not easy for us to find a broken spiritual vein, which can barely be used for cultivation." Qing Shuang, that's enough. Is cultivation more important than life? He Yu raised her eyebrows, which made the girl named Qing Shuang shut her mouth. The next moment, He Yu suddenly trembled, her face turned unnaturally red, and then a mouthful of blood sprayed out. "Senior sister?" The tree is poisonous. I was careless for a moment. He Yu reluctantly finished her sentence, and then her right arm melted like a burning candle. He Yu was obviously no stranger to this scene. She smiled sadly and put her hand on Qing Shuang's shoulder. The king pill in her jade mansion fiercely rotated, and her original true qi was continuously transmitted out. I'll leave everything to you. Go find Big Brother and then survive, including my share. Qing Shuang held back her tears, nodded firmly, and then operated the king pill to accept He Yu's true qi. The movements of the two seemed to have been practiced many times. After a while, He Yu had been turned into a pool of dirty blood by the red blood poison. Qing Shuang knelt on the ground and cried silently. But after a moment, Qing Shuang wiped away her tears and stood up. On a gravel hill, Lu Sandao was bathed in blood. In front of him, the corpses of the demons piled up into a hill, but more demons rushed up without hesitation. Those demons were not of the royal family, but some cannon fodder-level servants. Their strength was weak, but they won in number. Lu Sandao was like an arrow at the end of its flight. Not long after, his sword defense was broken, and those beast-type demons rushed forward to bite his body. Ha ha ha, you bastards want to eat me, then I'll let you eat to your heart's content today. With that, the king pill exploded, and the burst of sword chi swept in all directions. Hundreds and thousands of demons were stirred into meat sauce, and Lu Sandao himself did not even have his bones left. After Lu Sandao's death, a small flying sword, carrying a flickering ball of light, wobbled towards a certain place. This was a deep underground cave. 3 disciples of Spirit Sword sect guarded the entrance of the cave, stepping on the 3 individual sword array, struggling to resist the siege of thousands of demons outside the cave. Before long, the 3 of them felt that their magical power was exhausted, and it was difficult for them to continue. One of them clenched his teeth and said, "Wang Chenai, Xie Mingxian, you go first." Understood. Then, the palms of the 3 people gently touched each other. The leader spat out a ball of light from his palm, and then he grinned. "Remember to help me find a reliable person. Rest assured. Senior Brother Song." After many times of sacrifice, the disciples of Spirit Sword sect were no longer unfamiliar with life and death separation. Wang Chenai and Xie Mingxian didn't hesitate too much and just turned around to leave. Then Senior Brother Song turned around, and the king pill in his jade mansion burst into pieces, which turned into thousands of flying swords and stirred up a bloody storm outside the cave. Next to a crystal-like calm lake, Xie Mingxian helped Wang Chenai walk slowly. While walking, he used the moonlight reflected on the water to heal his injury. However, it didn't take long for Wang Chenai to shake his head. "Junior Brother Xie, I don't think I can make it. Don't waste your energy to heal me." "No. You've saved me so many times. How can I just watch you die? Consider it as my atonement. If it weren't for me and Zhang Sheng, how could these things happen? You guys were implicated by us. Of course, I'm still better than that kid Zhang Sheng. He's too unreasonable. He ruined the big thing for a woman. Forget it. Senior Brother always says that when a person is about to die, his words are kind, so I'll say something nice. Mingxian, you must live." With that, he stretched out his hand and pressed it on Xie Mingxian's chest. "Mingxian, there are some words that I actually wanted to say a long time ago. I'm listening. There's actually a reason why I haven't had a girlfriend all these years. Ha ha ha, look at how scared you are. Here, Senior Brother Song's belongings. Oh, and mine, I'll give them to you." With that, an unquestionable warmth flowed into his jade mansion. Xie Mingxian opened his mouth and said with a trembling voice, "Who are you going to give them to? Who else is left?" Wang Chenye's eyes dimmed. "Everyone is almost dead. Oh right, give them to Xiao Wu. Big Brother has always doted on her. Wang Wu. But Big Brother likes her so much, there must be a reason. Let's believe in Big Brother." In the end, are we the only ones left? Ouyang Shang smiled wryly. Zhang Sheng, Feng Yin, Lu Xian, Fang He, Zhou Ming, Lu Li, Guanhai, Wang Wu. It's just the few of you. But it's enough. Next, I'm going to do one thing, but before that, I need you to promise me one thing. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.